Hello, and welcome back to Sudden But Inevitable, the podcast where I grab my friends by the face and use their bodies to break down the gates of the gatekeepers of my favorite fandoms. I, of course, am Captain Bootscoot, aka Vanilla Husband, aka your host, Jesse. Now, with me this week, I am very proud to say, is a longtime, very good friend of mine. He's got his own podcast, and I can't do this show without him. His name is Ricky D from Best Flicks with Ricky D. Ricky D from Best Flicks with Ricky D. How are you doing this week, my friend?
I'm doing good. It's been a good week for podcasting.
Especially if you're podcasting with us. I mean, I'm sure it's been a good podcasting week for other people too, but specifically here at the Twist My Arm Network. Speaking of, we do also have to introduce you to somebody that you've met before, the head of the Twist My Arm Network and the host of the Twist My Arm podcast, my very long-time friend, Josh. Josh, welcome back to Sudden But Inevitable. How are you doing this week?
I am so good. I'm so good to be back and doing this. That's all I got. I mean, dang, it's been a long time since I've been here. I feel like I've missed a lot of stuff, and I'm just so freaking ready to get back into it.
Speaking of it, there is a lot of it to get into. Now, normally with Sudden But Inevitable, I make you guys, as I mentioned just now, watch something you've never seen before that I love, that I want to make you love. But this time around, that's not the case. Right now we're watching movies, and it's kind of like this weird fair game season. Now, because I can't just be handing out movies for you guys to watch all the time. I mean, I could, but I don't know if everybody wants that. Speaking of everybody, hello to everybody in the chat. Hello, Callie. Good morning. Thank you for being here with us. Whoop, whoop. Welcome back, Josh. Good morning. Good morning. The last person that we have to introduce to you this week is somebody that you know if you've ever been to Sudden But Inevitable before. And if you haven't, you will get to know this person, and I'm pretty sure you're going to love him just as much as we do. I, of course, am talking about my very good friend and wonderful podcast host extraordinaire, Cameron Harrison of the GreenShirt podcast, a newbie's trek through the next generation. Cameron, if you wouldn't mind doing me a favor, my friend, tell me how you're doing, and then explain what we're watching and why we're watching it.
I guess I do have an on switch. Okay. Well, I'm doing quite fantastic. Thank you so much for inviting me here to your little bonus season of movies. And I am excited to, take the opportunity to share something I love with you guys, at least half of you guys, for the first time. Yes. Am I talking about the movie now? Or?
Josh has, well, as far as I'm aware, Josh, you have seen this before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, yeah. Ricky D from Best Flicks with Ricky D and I have never seen this movie before, which is called Slither. Now,
Well, does that mean we need to move us to the top and you to the bottom?
if you would like, you can do that. I know that those sorts of things mean a lot to you. So really quickly, I want to say hello to Rona in the chat. She is here with us as well, as always. So thank you for being here, Rona. Yes, we are watching Slither this week, ladies and gentlemen, and the emperors in the chat and out in listening in podcast land. If you haven't seen Slither before, go watch it right now. It's available in the United States, at least, on a streaming service called Peacock. It's free. Go ahead, Ricky D from Best Flicks with Ricky D.
Did Cameron also have a hand in choosing the last movie we did? I've already blocked the name of it.
Space Sweepers? No.
No, before that. I'm sorry.
Highlander?
Oh, you're talking about
Highlander. Thank you. Yes,
No.
Highlander. Did
How
Cameron
can you
choose
not
Highlander?
forget? What?
No, he didn't help choose Highlander. I
Okay.
chose Highlander of my own volition, and Cameron wished that he could have been there, but he was unavailable. So
Okay.
that's probably what you're remembering.
I was
Yeah,
there in
I'm just-
spirit.
I have a vendetta against these people trying to make me watch Peacock. I've maxed
that is
out
the
on my
last-
streaming services. I prefer to ignore Peacock.
It's literally free, so it's of no detriment to you, but I smell what you're stepping in, and I appreciate where you're coming from.
On that note, Peacock really messed with me watching this movie because I'd be watching it and then there'd be some like serious commercial that I thought was part of the movie and then found out that it was not. It was really jarring. I mean, obviously like the State Farm commercials were
So
pretty
you're-
easy to spot, but like those random commercials,
You were
I wish I could
thinking
remember, but
that there was some kind of like WandaVision style in-universe commercial happening in the movie
Kind
that
of.
was like,
I mean, it
Just
happened
wondered
at the
why
very
the
beginning.
characters had such gas problems and kept talking about their gas problems so much.
No, it was just
I-
like the first one I saw was like the first commercial break in there. I was like, wait, this is weird to be a part of this movie. Like, what's happening right now? They're like
so
in the store.
I'll be honest, when I watched Highlander on Peacock for the podcast Sudden But Inevitable, which you can go listen to on any podcast service,
Heyo.
I didn't get a commercial. Like there was a commercial before the movie and then straight through, and I was like, yes, I love this. And actually that happened to me twice because I've seen it twice on Peacock. This movie, there was one commercial at the start, and then the movie started, and then there was one commercial like 15 minutes in, and then no more commercials. Now I've got it pulled up on my television to help me pick my shot of the show, and there are like 6 commercial breaks on the pause bar when I look at it. So
And they're all in the first half of the movie, right? The second
Yeah.
half of the movie,
yeah,
you can watch.
is
Yep,
weird.
I've experienced the exact same thing.
Because this movie has like very specific like fade to black moments, which would be perfect for a commercial break, but it didn't look like they lined up at all.
it
Didn't even try.
and it would be perfect for a commercial break if they had, yeah, like you said, there literally no algorithm that goes just find a black screen and then do a commercial. Like
No, they'll do it right in the middle of
Um,
dialogue. They'll be talking and then bloop, commercial.
Well, that's why I ordered my copy on Amazon and watched the DVD.
yeah,
Well,
really
you know what,
quickly,
Cameron?
I mean, some of
We are
us actually love cinema and want
We
to
are
support it, and
I'm out, guys.
Speaking, Josh, he's just speaking Ricky D. That's all he's doing.
Oh, right.
So-
You guys need to stop hanging out.
So let's just say this really quickly up front. I plan to buy this movie physically. I would like to own this. I'd like to have it in my collection. Now, that having been said, Ricky D
to the disc.
and I, Ricky D and I have never seen this movie before. Josh, I know, has seen this movie. When I told him we were watching it, he was very excited. Cameron,
Okay.
as the impetus, as the standard bearer for Slither, what was it about Slither that made you go, okay, I have to share this with the Sudden But Inevitable crew?
Sure.
Because okay, full disclosure, let me just say this really quickly. I said, Cameron, we're doing a movie season. Cameron said, cool, let's watch Slither. I was like, cool, totally, let's do that. And then a couple of weeks, maybe a month after that, I went, Cameron, we're doing a movie season. Why don't you want to do a movie? Didn't I ask you? And he was like, I mean, I said Slither, and I was like,
That's
yes,
how
you did.
resistant
Let's
Jesse was
do
to
Slither.
this.
It wasn't that I was resistant. I literally forgot about it. But I felt the need to be 100% honest about that because you guys know what happens when you're not honest around Ricky Grumpy Fish D from Best Flicks with Ricky D. So, Cameron, if you wouldn't mind, my friend, enlighten us.
Sure, yeah. Well, you guys may remember this little TV show you did ways back, Firefly, I think it's called. And there's an actor who appears in that show. His name is Nathan Fillion. And
I remember him.
think it was during
He's all
that
right.
season I found out one way or another that you, at least Jesse, had not seen Slither, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. It stars this actor that you like a lot, basically playing the same character in some ways. I'll dive more into that later, but so I was a little surprised. And then as our relationship grew, we talked about James Gunn quite a bit with our discussions and debates revolving around Guardians of the Galaxy and the Suicide Squad, and I came to realize that he hadn't seen anything before James Gunn's Marvel career. And I felt, even though he is what he might call horror resistant, it might be worth showing him a film like Slither.
I think that it was a good call because I am definitely horror resistant. Now, that doesn't mean that I've never seen a horror movie, and it doesn't mean that I have no, I guess, spectrum of taste when it comes to horror. That having been said, usually don't like gore. I don't like an overuse of blood. You know, that's this, that, and the other thing. I'm generally kind of squeamish. But
How does Joanna feel about that?
so my lovely long-suffering wife is actually more of a slasher fan than she is a like horror fan.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Okay, and that makes total sense because I
Now-
can watch slasher movies like all day, but
Yeah, and I really can't. I can watch a select few of the Halloween movies, and I like the Scream movies because they're very self-referential and they make fun of themselves in a way that I appreciate. But in general, I mean, like just violence, right? Like oh, the violence in this movie. But that having been said, I've seen, for example, Event Horizon, which is very violent, and though it disturbed me to a great deal, I recognize that it was a good movie, and looking back on it, I'm
Love
glad
that
that I
movie.
saw it. But I probably wouldn't watch it again anytime soon. Maybe, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Hashtag release the
Possibility.
Anderson cut.
Just putting it out there. Now,
I saw that movie on a whim, and I was blown away by it. I was like, "Wow, okay, cool."
I think if there's one thing other than the nickname Ricky Anti-Marvel D from Best Flicks with Ricky D that we've established on this show before, it's that Josh
Have you
only
ever watched the
watches...
Marvel Canon Madness podcast, Ricky?
I've watched a little bit.
Oh, okay, cool.
That's his way of saying I've never downloaded an episode to my phone, like for any reason at all, like even to help with the downloads.
That's
but, but the other thing we established along the way is that Josh only watches movies on a whim. So for Josh to say I saw Event Horizon on a whim, it's not that surprising, really.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
That's just kind of what you do. That's how you watch movies.
I pick things. I don't do the Netflix scroll. I dedicate my 2 hours to something that I've never seen, and that's.
And then you play video games while it's on.
I do actually. I'm almost done with Metroid Dread. It's wonderful.
We will get there. We'll get there. Okay. Now, we have some wonderful comments in the chat that I would like to point out. Josh, my friend, the producer behind the glass, if you wouldn't mind highlighting these comments. Callie says, same though. I appreciate what people like about horror slasher films, but personally, I prefer them being far, far away from me. Thank you. Can you highlight the next one too? Because I like that one. Ha ha, Ricky's face of, oh, we're going there, are we? Yes. This is my favorite part of having a live show, you guys, is that we get away with basically nothing.
I have to remember people can see my face.
So, speaking of
Ooh.
faces that people can see, Ricky D, before we jump into this movie, okay, really quickly, before we jump into this movie proper, Cameron, before we get a synopsis of this movie, is there anything else you feel like you have to say about Slither? And then we'll go to Josh.
Okay. I mean, I just want to ask you guys, since this is an introduction, and since you are perhaps a little horror resilient, not resilient, resistant, and because of maybe your preconceived notions of James Gunn from the superhero milieu that you know him from. I mean, what were your expectations going into this movie? What did you think I was subjecting you to, and how did it compare to what you saw? Both you and Ricky can step up to the mic for this.
Actually, could I ask Ricky to go first? Because Ricky, I don't know, have you seen a James Gunn movie before?
Guardians of the Galaxy.
You have seen Guardians of the
watched
Galaxy.
I did.
Did you? How did you?
I like the little raccoon.
Okay. All right.
The trash panda.
So yeah, Ricky D is essentially if like a mobster uncle was watching a Disney film with you, he would go, "I like the little raccoon. You know, it's a cute film."
That was some jokes in there. It was
from the
fine.
stupid kids, yeah. So Ricky, go ahead. Then I just wanted to establish that. So what were your expectations for this movie?
I kind of went into it rolling my eyes. I was expecting just kind of a bad teenage horror movie. I was in a kind of defensive posture for the first 30 minutes, maybe first 40 minutes. But I eventually did kind of relax a little bit. I let myself watch it. And especially looking back on it last night, today, I was like, I think I really enjoyed that. There was a lot to enjoy about that. It wasn't a great cinematic masterpiece, but it had a lot to enjoy.
I can agree with some of that. So like I had resistance to the movie going into it where I was like, I wouldn't say that I was rolling my eyes or crossing my arms. I feel like that's just how you watch movies, just like how Josh watches movies on a whim with like almost no like criteria.
I go into movies saying I'd rather be watching The Sopranos.
Right.
Well, see, I like to watch movies with a clear, like I haven't looked at the ratings. I haven't looked at any reviews. I like to make my own
trying to say.
Unlike some people in this room that just go based off the tomato meter and critic scores.
the way that I said it definitely came across as condescending, but what I was trying to say was that Josh goes into these things with a much more open mind, I feel, than Ricky. But I didn't want Ricky D to feel attacked, of course. But to the point of not knowing how I felt about the movie, I mean, because I had never seen it before, my expectations were, okay, I know Cameron. I have been on GreenShirt and Newbies Trek Through the Next Generation. We've talked about story
Me too.
structure and, episodic storytelling and, paying off foreshadowing and things like that. I know that Cameron looks at things with a directorial lens. He's, made movies before. He's got more analytical eye than I do when he watches movies. So if he's going to recommend something to me, it's probably something that he thinks is just at a certain tier of quality or higher. I feel like Cameron isn't the same way that I am, which is I know this movie is under a certain tier, and that's why I'm making you guys watch it. Cameron is like, this is what I respect the hell out of this kind of movie, so I'm going to have you watch it. Josh, when you found out we were going to do Slither, when I put that in the chat, what was your immediate reaction?
I was excited because I was like, oh, I haven't seen the movie in a long time. I remember it being really freaking weird, but it'll be good to watch it again. And there were so many, like, especially nowadays, being the person that I am, really diving into films and TV series and stuff, and really looking at actors and producers and directors and musical credits and all that stuff. It was really cool to go back to a movie that I had seen way before, but didn't realize how much I liked every single actor in it, and the director and all that stuff. It's like
So,
kind of reminiscing with a new lens, I guess.
and to your point and Cameron's point, there is a thing that most people do with Firefly that I think I just didn't do, which is after Firefly, they go, okay, I need to watch everything Nathan Fillion's ever been in. I need to watch everything that Alan Tudyk has ever been in. I need to watch everything that Jewel Staite has ever been in, right on down the line, which is totally understandable, fair, and, the kind of thing that I would normally probably do. I just, for whatever reason, didn't think to do it with Firefly. I think for me, it was because I knew there's never going to be a project that has all of them or a project that has enough of them to feel like that chemistry to me. Now, Destiny got really close because that had Nathan Fillion and Gina Torres, and they were playing basically the same roles, but like far in the future and like with some space magic. But I think anybody that has done that probably really is grateful for having done so, because there are not a lot of movies, I don't think, where Nathan Fillion is the lead, right? Like, he's not always the main guy.
Mm-hmm.
James Gunn movies in particular, Nathan Fillion has been in all of them. I just found out when the Suicide Squad came out. That was when I found
in
that
some
out.
form or fashion.
Yeah, and so has Rooker, correct?
I think so. All of them. Yes.
Believe.
Yep.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, that's cool. Like, if I got hugely famous, I would put at least 2 of the 3 of you in my movies. Like, that's a guarantee.
Now we gotta fight it out to figure out who it is.
So I and like I love that he puts his brother in the movies, right? Like
Was his
that
brother
was the
in
thing
this
that was-
one?
I believe
I thought for sure he was in the Grant pile at the end.
yeah.
It looked just like him. It was not him.
The Grant pile.
So maybe that was the James Gunn character then, because distorted
Right.
James Gunn kind of looks like Sean Gunn. Not in
Yeah,
a mean
there you
way.
go. If you squint
Right,
your
like-
eyes.
Yeah, but like, yeah. I mean, they're related. They're not the same guy. But yeah, so when I found it out, I was like, okay, that's cool. So yeah, I went into this kind of giddily excited. To Ricky D's point, though, I would really quickly, we have to say hi to Roy, the Intrepid DM, in the chat. Hello, Roy. Thank you for being with us this evening. Go listen to the Intrepid DM Journeys wherever you listen to podcasts. It is the newest member of the Twist My Arm podcast network. And let me tell you, even if you don't play tabletop RPGs, it is soothing to listen to.
Great show. It's a great
Dude,
show.
I could listen to Roy talk all night long. I'm not even
It's
kidding.
a great show. Yeah.
Now, I went into this movie like pretty excited, right? Like but I didn't know how to feel for the first 30 or 40 minutes because Rooker's performance in this movie, I'm going to get it out of the way, is really good. I really, really liked it. But I didn't know, like, okay, is he a totally bad guy? Like, is he irredeemable? Or, like, am I going to see something in this movie I don't want to see? Because, like, if he does something graphically unpleasant to Elizabeth Banks, I'm gonna just
You
gonna
know,
have problems. Like,
I actually think he had a really, really huge redeeming moment in this movie.
Mhm.
I think he like him
Right.
as the like the first
think he has a
character.
couple.
I think he did like
I
had a good moment because
100%.
at first I was like, oh, this guy's a jerk,
That's
and then there's that one scene where I'm like, okay, all right, I can respect him now.
so that's literally that's my point. Is until
He's an
that
asshole,
point,
but he's not a fucking asshole.
right? But there was
Yeah.
up until a certain point, you're going, where's his line? But then when they show you where his line is, you go, oh, okay, I'm gonna have a lot of fun with this movie, you guys. Like, this is
Right.
gonna be great. Sure,
Right.
kill Brenda. I don't care about Brenda at all. Do whatever you want to Brenda. You know what? Do whatever you want to the whole town. Honestly, as long as Elizabeth Banks is okay, I'm gonna be okay for this movie. And the movie goes, all right, cool. Let's just do that because I think we're on the same page. And that's where I ended up because it was like, Elizabeth Banks, you guys, I don't know what it is about her. There's something in her smile and her eyes that is like, you to consider that somebody would be mean to her. I mean, I know she's an actress, right? Like, so the characters that I know her as, like the light, bubbly, fun all the time person, maybe that's not who she really is. I'm willing to believe that it is, and even if it's not, it makes it difficult to see bad things happen to that person on screen for me. So
I believe she was the whole reason I watched this movie in the first place. Like a long time ago, I was like, oh yeah.
Ricky D from Best Flicks with Ricky D. Oh, Callie, it is indeed a very happy, sudden but inevitable day. Roy, happy, sudden but inevitable day. You guys, thank you. I love it. Go ahead,
This is a
Ricky.
thing
sorry.
now. This is great.
If you like Elizabeth Banks so much, go watch 30 Rock with your wife.
Can I not watch it alone?
Yeah, I think it'd
No,
be
I'll
better
watch-
if you watched it with her.
I'll watch it.
She
with
has a
my wife.
really great role in it. She's a fairly prominent character for a couple seasons.
Again, I guess I have a reputation. I don't know. Maybe it's because I made a podcast where I make people watch my favorite things, but I have a reputation as somebody who resists the things that other people tell me to watch, and it's really not that. It's just that I have this much free time, and I spend most of it, making shows and hanging out with other people that make shows, so I can be on their shows. And
Avoiding your wife.
It's not like she's
Oh
been
my
on my
God.
show. Like, she watches all the stuff that I watch. Like, she watched this movie in particular, and that's how I gauged part of it was, how comfortable am I with this? Because, and then like I said, at a certain point you go, cool. Like I said, killed the entire town. I'm fine with it. I'm actually ready to watch it happen. But I need to know, like. I just needed to know that there was going to be some part of this movie that I could feel safe about. And
Well, I think that's the strength of the movie is that it shows you these incredibly uncomfortable things, but then in its own way, it lets you know it's okay. You're in safe hands. It's okay to enjoy this.
and that makes it not a guilty pleasure, but like maybe an indulgence.
Masterclass
I
in
wouldn't-
tone.
Yeah, it's an indulgence I wouldn't normally find myself enjoying. But you're right. Tone is specifically what is making it work for me. I think that's exactly it, and you nailed it. So, all right. Does anybody have anything else to say before we give a synopsis and jump into this movie? Because
Yes, I think Cameron should give his own personal synopsis of this movie on a whim.
You mean a ooh, good. A gore-filled laugh fest that is bursting at the seams with just as many F-bombs as slithery slugs.
I can dig that.
Or perhaps the redeeming tale of a woman who truly loves her husband but finds that they are just incompatible and must put that relationship behind her and move forward in life
Plus slugs.
It's been,
with slugs.
and tentacles. Now,
Oh, that's good. That's good.
this could have been called Tentacles, the movie.
Sure.
And if somebody makes a musical of this, I think they should call it Tentacles with an exclamation point. That may already exist. I'm not sure. If I stole that idea subconsciously, somebody please let me know. Callie in the
It was
chat
called
says, we still went and watched an episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine right after finishing this, though, just in case. We were we were a little bit traumatized, but then we relaxed partway through. She forced her husband to watch it with her, and they were expecting to be traumatized, so that's probably why they were a little tensed up. Yeah, so the synopsis basically is a meteor with an alien on it lands in, I think, South Carolina, and Nathan Fillion spends the whole time training to be Captain Mal Reynolds on Earth and saving a town from a combination of the Venom symbiote and a wave of zombies and, just all manner of unpleasant, stereotypical horror and Southern stereotypes or characters based on those things.
I was trying to find a good drink for worms today. So I was like looking at all the tequilas, or I was looking at all the wines to see if there was some sort of
there's only one
good
drink
drink
that you
there,
could
but
drink.
there is.
While you're
There really
talking
is.
about
and it's a Jack and Coke. Ask me what kind of Coke.
what kind of Coke you got in your Jack and Coke, Josh?
Mr. Pibb.
Oh.
Why?
Because that's what this movie's all about. That's like
he
the whole
asked
part
your
of this
secretary
movie.
to pack it,
Make sure-
Jesse.
It's 'cause it's the only kind of Coke he
Pam.
likes.
Give me some Mr. Pibb, Pam.
Okay, yeah, Pam Beasley, whose name is Jenna Fisher,
Fisher.
in real life, right? A lot of range. She once played a secretary on TV, but in this movie, she
Plays
plays a
another
in
secretary.
this
Do you
as
know
well.
why she's
Sorry.
in this movie?
Does she know James Gunn?
She was married to him at the time.
Are you serious?
I'm
really
serious.
cool.
And
Crazy.
she was actually just supposed to have a small cameo, but the person who was originally playing the secretary got another film offer and left the project, so they put her in.
Were they going to play a secretary as well?
Yeah, it was a male
the other
secretary,
movie?
so they had to rewrite it. Oh, in the other movie, I don't know. But they filmed this, and then The Office came out, and so between them filming the movie and Slither coming out, Jenna Fisher suddenly became the most famous person in the cast.
Oh, so the original actor, I guess you could say, brought a Thomas knife to a James Gunn fight. Yeah, no. Okay.
So you're
all
also
right. I mean,
you're
I
also
had to-
saying
had
that
to try
you're
it.
saying that she's not
was-
married anymore to James
Not
Gunn?
anymore,
Is she
no.
Is she married at all?
Yes,
Because
John Krasinski, and they
damn it.
are. No, she's
not
not. I'm kidding. He's married
John
to Emily.
Krasinski's married to
Blunt,
Emily
Josh.
Blunt.
Yeah,
I'm looking it up. I'm looking it up right now.
he's married to
who's
Emily
Lee
Blunt.
Kirk? Who's Lee Kirk? That's apparently who she's married to now. Ugh, whatever.
Just change your name and it counts,
disappointing.
right, Josh?
Yeah,
Legally
Disappointing.
change your name to Lee Kirk, and
same difference.
I'm pretty sure that's how it works. If I may start at the very beginning of this film, I would love to take credit for this, but sadly I can't. It was an accident, and Highlander did kind of mess it up there. That one's for you, Ricky D. But I love how your guys' show has taken place 99% in space, right? You guys have spent the most of your podcasting time in space, and here we open in space on this asteroid that brings us to Earth for this very terrestrial-based film. And 100% intended on my part, absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
You
and
had to keep the space aesthetic, right? You had to keep the
That's right.
sci-fi aesthetic
right.
for this. So that
well,
makes sense.
this actually fits on an even deeper level because the second Highlander movie, which does not exist, the very beginning of that movie actually explains that Connor and Sean Connery's character, who are both totally still alive, I guess, are actually aliens from the
Yes.
planet Zeist. And that the whole first movie was like a understanding of the rules of the game. And
Yikes.
so like it gets so much worse. Point being, it ignored the canon of the first movie and got even worse. This is kind of the opposite thing, where Cameron's ignoring the canon of us coming to Earth to watch Highlander, and he's bringing us to Earth and reestablishing Slither as our first terrestrial movie ever on
There
Sudden
you
But
go.
Inevitable. So that's how we do that. That's what we call an award-winning podcast, my friends. I gotta say, I was excited for this. Okay, so I was resistant because I knew it was going to be horror. I didn't know how gory it would be, and that was part of it. I was resistant until, honestly, the egg cracked open, and then the title popped out, and that paired with the music. I was like, oh, I'm here for this. Like, this
Yeah.
is going to be, it'll be fine. Like, even if everybody dies in this, it will be because it's that kind of movie, right? Like, it's a, like you said, man, it's an exercise in tone, and I don't know what instrument they're playing. I'm sure that you've got a better description of it than I do, but they are playing it masterfully. So
And I think that's what drew me into this movie again. Like I remember liking this movie and being like, yeah, that was cool. That was a fun little, thriller or whatever. But now after watching multiple James Gunn movies and falling in love with his movies and then, you know, watching Firefly and falling in love with Nathan Fillion and like just all Michael Rooker from Walking Dead, because that's where I know him from first, was Walking Dead. And like seeing all those characters and then that first opening shot when the music starts, I was like, oh yeah, this is a Gunn movie and this is gonna be great. And I'm gonna like it way more than I liked it back then because now I'm familiar with all of these people and I was
well,
right.
I was familiar with all of the people except, to Cameron's point, James Gunn. Like all I had seen was Guardians of
Elizabeth
the Galaxy.
Banks, sure, but
Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Well, I mean, yeah, but just because she's in it doesn't mean it's going to be an Elizabeth Banks style movie, right? Like,
right. My 14-year-old
Pitch
self
Perfect.
though was
right, exactly. So I was like, I guess I just expect like fun music and like a jaunty attitude toward irreverent comedy, and I assume that's what I'm getting. And then when that egg cracks open and Slither pops out and the music is like I was like, okay, yes, this is what I was expecting. This is what I'm getting. I'm here for this. I'm ready to go. Now, this character Grant. Michael Rooker in general. Can we just say Michael Rooker in general? I think the thing that's impressive about him is that he is like uncomfortable to look at in the way that you think if you saw him in real life he might whoop your ass, right? Like if you looked at him too long in a grocery store, he might be like, what's your problem? And you'd be like, I wasn't looking at you, you're not Michael Rooker, and then he would kick your ass, right? Like but he's probably like super, it doesn't matter, it's just that he has that look of a tough guy, and because he's such a good actor, he's able to use that to great effect, because I'm expecting him this whole movie to at some point become ruthless, right? And he really doesn't, because he manages to humanize the least human possible character,
There's a pathos there
that they could put him with, and it's largely him. I mean, he is shining through just piles of CGI and prosthetic by the end of this movie. Go ahead, Cameron.
Oh, just 2 points. I have laid eyes upon the man in the wild. Actually, I've waited on him at a restaurant at Michael Rooker.
Cool.
He is an incredibly sweet and nice man who really enjoys a hot chocolate.
That makes me so happy.
He's great. And then, yes, just now that we've mentioned the two things, I think this is James Gunn's style, is just a masterly firm grip on tone, on being able to balance very different tones, and creating horribly flawed characters that you can root for, that have humanity, that you want to see redeem themselves, or at least that you can relate with them throughout the film. And I think those are the two big what's the word I'm looking for, styles of James Gunn that travel through all his films.
Yeah, I'm okay. My emotions throughout the majority of this movie were like mirth, happiness, fun. I'm enjoying myself, and then there were a couple of parts where I was like, "Oh man, that's poignant," in like a slightly too realistic way for a horror sci-fi about space slugs. Like, ow. We do have to ask the hard-hitting questions here at Sudden But Inevitable, though. Josh, throw that up on the screen. Rona needs to know, Cameron, hot chocolate with or without the marshmallow?
I believe it was without, but he was a big fan of the Mexican hot chocolates that our barista was very good at making. Those were his favorite. He remembered our barista every time he comes to Portland and asks for his specialty Mexican hot chocolate. So thank you for asking Rona an important question.
Why don't you give me one of those hot chocolates? That was pretty bad, but
that's pretty good. I don't know.
Okay, well, it'll be on the audio version, and I'll listen back to it, and I'll decide if it was good then.
Work on it.
There's something about the setup of his character, right? The rich guy in a poor town with a wife that one of my favorite phrases from popular television is he outkicked his coverage with this woman, right? So everybody in town is like, she's way too good looking for him. She's way too good a person for him. She's only
Probably
with him
too young.
because, yeah, well, and she's, she's only with him because he swooped in at the right time of her life and saved her from, a lot of difficulty or something along those lines. It's a understandable, relatable character that a lot of people in their heads go, oh, I know a person like that, or I know a couple like that, or there's a couple that has been talked about like that in my orbit that I've heard about. And that's kind of the first interaction we get with Rooker's character. So it kind of puts us in that headspace, right? And then the rest of the movie is like him redeeming himself in our eyes despite us having no other frame of reference with him. So the movie like does its own thing to you, right? Like don't judge somebody until you see how they actually are, and then you actually see how he is and you go, oh, that's rough, man. Like he probably really was trying there, and dang.
Well, it's
Maybe
interesting.
sometimes
I mean,
it's not enough.
yeah, one, it would have been so easy to make that a toxic relationship and just have made him like, again, an effing asshole from the very beginning, and yeah, just she needs to get out, and they didn't, and that made it a more interesting film. But also, like, so we're talking about the Grant character, which is who he is for the first 15 minutes of the movie, and then he turns into the alien symbiote, which is kind of a symbiote of the alien and the Grant character, and even that, whatever that is, also becomes they find the humanity of the alien symbiote.
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
So I have to ask, just because we're a fan of asking relational questions, based on what we've just watched here at Sudden But Inevitable. Ricky D and then Josh. So when you guys are at you're in a new town, right? Like you're at a town you've never been in before, and you are not super comfortable, that feeling of like being a stranger in a strange land. And all of a sudden you get inhabited by a parasite from space. What do you think is the easiest way to stay undercover for the longest amount of time before somebody just totally figures out that you're not from there in so many ways? Let's start with Josh.
Go ahead, Josh.
The best way to stay undercover when there's an alien crawling up here, which I love that scene when the alien jumps into Michael Rooker and then they show the x-ray of the alien like swimming up into his brain.
Yeah.
But
then
first of all, I don't
immediately like gets like a personality change, but he's still able to kind of hold it together. So what would you do to hold it together? Go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, I just think like with him, his own personal self was like battling the Borg self, the collective self, and like I think he was trying to save his own humanity as much as he could by using memories of his wife, throughout the movie. But honestly, like if I'm gonna get taken over by an alien, I don't give a shit anymore. Like if I'm not controlling it, if I'm not controlling myself and I'm being controlled by something else, what am I gonna do? Like I have
I'm getting like a Rick and Morty style cutaway in my head where Josh with tentacles is going up to people and killing them and going, sorry, not my fault, parasite. Sorry, parasite, not my fault, sorry. And then like slithering away.
Yeah, see, and that's probably what I would do.
Well, see, I mean, so there was a little bit of Ricky D, correct me if I'm wrong. I had a little bit of a flashback to, was that Vincent D'Onofrio in Men in Black, who played Edgar, and he was like, he was trying to pull his skin up so that it would be tight.
I got
like,
the same thing in my notes. I have Men in Black. Like,
so,
when's he gonna ask for the sugar water? That's what I was waiting for.
Right. Yeah. So
he was more into meat.
That scene, the first time, I was like, that was one of those moments where I went, oh, this might be the part of the movie where it becomes really uncomfortable. Like, we might
the meat part.
Well, because he says it. He said again. It goes back to how good Rooker is, because the way he says meat the first time, you're like, ew,
that is meat.
Like, but because he just says the one word, he like opens that fridge and goes meat, and you're just like, I don't like this. Like, it's kind of, it's just, I don't know.
Yeah,
I love that part of the movie the whole like that those 30 minutes are a little slower, the build up, but it is just like the movie starts in this very creeping dread sort of way, like what is happening? We don't really know what's happened to him. He's doing weird things. He eats the dog. Sorry, Ricky D. I thought about you when that happened. And then it's, you know, it's not until the midpoint of the movie, which we'll get to. I want to wait a little bit, but then things like really jump off. But I do love that it just kind of lets you like simmer with the weirdness for a while.
Yeah, and there was a very uneasy feeling for the first 30 minutes for sure. Like I was like, okay, something, what's gonna happen, you know? Like, and he was very, I don't know, like to Jesse's point, Michael Rooker was so good about being creepy and being like, you know, getting taken over by this worm thing. And then
Well, and they have okay, here's the other thing. I've not only never seen a lot of movies with Nathan Fillion as the lead. I've never seen I don't know that I've ever seen a movie with Rooker as the lead in particular. Usually I see him as a really strong side character or like a secondary main character, right? Like Yondu. Or he had a great role in Suicide Squad, but it didn't last long. Nathan Fillion lasted a little bit longer.
Just a little.
But there was like, for me, there was some aspect of who's the protagonist of this movie.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And then I went, oh, it's Elizabeth Banks. Okay, cool, and I'm good with that. But it was also
100%.
kind of maybe like Michael Rooker's character is a protagonist. Like his character gets used as an antagonist, but I think his intentions are mostly protagonal. If they were a shape, it would be a protagon.
If it were
I gotcha.
A subatomic particle, it would be a
Proton?
protagon. I mean, I'll agree that I think his character goes through the most emotional changes, the biggest emotional ride, the biggest emotional roller coaster and character changes throughout the film.
And I have the widest ranges of emotions about him of all the characters in the movie, because every other character in the movie, you know, like I was saying, Elizabeth Banks, I'm like, you go, honey, I love you. Nathan Fillion, same thing, but a little bit more sexual. And the rest of the town don't really care about.
Well, let's talk about Jack
ahead.
McCready for a second. Speaking of lovable assholes, where was your journey with him?
Wait. Oh, yes. He okay.
The
that's
mayor
probably
of the
perfect
town,
way
just for
to
everyone.
describe him, because he, to me, I was like, okay, 80s character, you know, typical corporate fat cat who is into politics now, and he's, you know, he probably is a womanizer, and he's this, that, and the other thing.
Did you notice what his business was? Because he is the
did.
mayor, but he runs a town business, which you'll only catch the second time you watch, because you can see his name on the side of a building during that opening montage before we meet him.
Club?
he's got to be a car salesman.
It's even better. It is the auction house and funeral home joint.
He's taking
together.
dead people's things and auctioning them to the highest bidder. Wow.
What a prick.
Anyway, I just
But
I still love him,
he's,
though.
but he, in an interesting way, right? He's one of the audience stand-in characters, because he's commenting on these things in a way that's like, this is how you would be. You'd be like, I have literally no idea what's going on. My stress is through the roof. I'm very agitated right now. Like, I don't want any of you to speak with me. I'm irritable. I just want a small piece of comfort in this world.
Where's my
Like,
Mr. Pibb? I just
can
want a
you
Mr.
please-
Pibb right now. Where's my Mr. Pibb?
Well, and then they're explaining everything. Like, this movie gives you this lore dump that's, I mean, maybe 30 seconds long and creepy as hell, but I still loved it. But it's like, this character spends the whole movie going, why is this movie happening? And you're like, yeah, why is this movie happening? And Nathan Fillion spends the whole movie going, you know what? It's James Gunn. Just roll with it, because we don't have time to think. We just have time to act. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like that might be when Nathan Fillion is at his best, when he gets to play an intelligent but impulsive, overconfident character that doesn't necessarily have every tool that they need, but knows what that would look like if they had those tools.
Yeah,
Ricky
and
D.
plus Jack McCready is a reference to Kurt Russell from The Thing, the name, so that kind of makes him a little bit lovable too.
Kurt Russell's name from The Thing and Kurt Russell's name from Big Trouble in Little China, correct?
Mm,
Wasn't one
could
of
be.
them McCready and one of them Jack?
Well, I think actually his name in the thing is R.J. McCready, and this guy is J.R. McCready, or one of them. They're reversed.
Right, but then
But yeah, he is
in
named
Big
Jack.
Trouble, his name
Old
is
Jack
Jack,
Burton.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we could definitely play the movie homage in this.
Well, so
film.
I was going to ask Ricky D from Best Flicks with Ricky D. I know that you, as an anti-mirth person, don't really like beloved things from the 1980s. But if there were some 1980s movies that you enjoyed, would you be able to pick them out? Because I feel like this movie has some definite 80s DNA in it.
Just like you guys were talking about with The Thing, we were kind of getting into the climax of the movie, and I go, okay, they have to kill this thing. How are they going to kill it? And my first thought was flamethrower. They're going to have to burn it down like they did The Thing.
And so Thing was definitely your main
Yes, 100%.
thing.
Your
thing.
first thing wasn't Chekhov's hand grenade,
Can we?
Well, I had thoughts
which
about
actually didn't work,
Firefly
so it
with the
wasn't
hand grenade.
Chekhov's.
Yeah, as soon as he said grenade,
Serenity,
you
rather.
thought Firefly because grenades.
Sure would be
grenades are
nice to have a
expensive.
grenade right about now.
That's good.
Well, and Captain said, "Don't eat the apples." Nobody listened. So this movie has like to the point about the 80s, right? Yes, there are some movie homages throughout. There's some neon-ness to this movie. Like it's real subtle, but it's like it's almost like because the coloring isn't necessarily neon. It's like the attitude is neon.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it feels like pink and black, and there's a lot of arcade style things happening in this. The cuts to black, like the fades to black, and then the what it has to be 20 minutes later, like they cut to black to show me 20 minutes have passed, which is like I am in love with this, and this movie is 90 minutes long. What are they doing cutting to black?
Well,
Like,
there's
okay.
two like big fades to black which happen on the act breaks. There's a couple other small ones too, but I noticed that like, oh, this is an act break. Okay.
End of Act 1.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, you guys, like Cameron, with you in particular, because I have been to your show, and your show is about a show that's heavily structured around acts. I do not recognize act structures in movies and TV like at all. Like I just don't. I'm not watching for them.
That's one of my favorite things to do is recognize when the ends of acts are,
Well, this is a good one to watch because it
Love
very
that.
clearly tells us where
Yeah.
each act is.
Yeah.
Is there some kind of like? I'm not asking this to be a jerk, but is there some kind of like additional benefit to going? Okay, we're done with that piece. Like to knowing in your heart, like, okay, this piece is over and the next piece is starting. Because
I think for
feel
me
like
it's
I'm just
easier to
like,
remember. Sorry.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
It's like easier to remember different things that happened in the different acts, because it's like, okay, at the end of this act there was this battle or this fight or this whatever, and then kind of lead up into that.
I find that really interesting because I think usually in our ratings, you say I liked this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing, and this thing, but I did not like this thing, this thing, and this thing. And I go, I had this amount of fun. I feel this way, these adjectives, my feelings, my emotions, and that. And then I give a rating. So it's interesting. I think that might be some of the actual difference in the way that you watch things versus the way that I watch things, which is just interesting to me.
It's
Cameron-
also when I can pause for smoke breaks.
Oh, that's true. That makes good sense. Cameron,
Just speaking of the homages, I did like another homage I picked up but because this was a movie full of homages, as soon as you see a pair of twins, even though we haven't gotten to the zombies or the mind control or the body snatching yet, whatever you want to call it, like you see those twins and you go, oh, they're going to turn evil somehow. Yeah. I don't know how, I don't know what this Grant being is doing, this squid guy, but they're going to turn evil somehow. I love that. And the other thing I loved about this movie, I remember watching it, and I think it got to the point where where Nathan Fillion sees the deer in the woods and the slugs crawling on the deer, and it hit me what he was doing, that he was taking like every subgenre of horror from the 60s through the 80s and like pouring it into a big bucket and stirring it up. We've got the It Came from Outer Space, we've got the zombie story, the body snatcher story, definitely body horror, and then here you even got a little bit of When Nature Attacks going on, and it's just It's just like
Okay.
again that third act when everything starts like snowballing.
The
You're
deer
like,
thing is
this is
so
so
funny.
fun.
Well, and I have to ask because I, like, as a non-filmmaker, I have no idea or where to start with this. But like, I saw when I posted this. Okay, we have to talk about this. When I posted about Slither and how we were going to talk about it on Sudden But Inevitable on Twitter, one Mr. James Gunn, the director of the movie, retweeted the post that I made about, what are your favorite lines about this movie. I had put in some words about how I felt about the film. And so according to my analytics, that has been seen over 100,000 times by people. It's like my most seen tweet ever, of course. Point being, people are very, very passionate about this movie. A lot of people love this movie. All he did was retweet it, and hundreds of people were like, oh, yeah, Slither, I love this thing. We are no strangers to deeply popular properties here at Sudden But Inevitable. We started with Firefly. But these high passion feelings are not all positive. I immediately ran into some people that were like, oh yeah, you should see the movie that it's a remake of called this, or oh yeah, it's totally just ripping off this, and this. And I was immediately disinclined to agree with that because I was like, I really doubt Cameron would go, hey, I love this movie. Yeah, it's a huge ripoff in every way of these other movies, but check this out. And having just watched Space Sweepers, which is a loving mishmash of every trope from the space western genre and that I've ever seen in my life, and not having been upset with that. And similar to Cowboy Bebop in general, which, by the way, you can go check out a really cool Sudden But Inevitable bonus episode on the brand new live-action Cowboy Bebop on your favorite podcast app as soon as you like. My question, though, is, at what point does it go from homage to ripoff or stealing or a blatant aping of a thing rather than homage or pastiche? Because for me, I don't know how to answer that question analytically. I can answer it by saying I think it's Ready Player One, but I can't explain why that's not okay. And all the stuff I just mentioned is okay. Cameron, can you explain it? And then Josh, I would love to hear your thoughts.
I mean, that is a great question. That's probably one of those that everyone has to answer for themselves. I mean, for me, I think part of it is the tone. And again, we're coming back to tone. And I think just James Gunn can masterfully weave all these tropes and ideas that we've seen before and brings a tone that tells you that that says it's a love letter. Like there was a moment in this movie where Starla pulls up and sees a billboard full of missing pet posters. And I did think like, wow, that's a trope. How many horror movies have we seen that in? But and then the camera pulls back and the music just gets so over the top. And it's all done in this way that makes me feel like James Gunn isn't doing this because he feels he has to, or because he feels like if I'm telling this type of movie, I have to have the scene. I get the impression, I get the tone that like he is someone who's grown up on these tropes and loves them and has been waiting his entire life to put those into his own movie and stir them all up. So yeah, I mean, for me, for my money, this is like the Tarantino style of remixing things he's grown up with and loved.
And
Josh,
I think that, I think a ripoff is the remakes. I think the remakes that come out of all these old movies and stuff, they're kind of the ripoffs, especially if they're not made well. You know what I mean? If
Like
they're just
Cowboy
using the name.
Bebop?
Did you watch Cowboy Bebop? I'm on episode 7, and it's actually, I would look at that as more of an homage to the original.
Okay,
But
I'm just you said remake, so I'm just kind of throwing.
no, I'm talking like the Mummy with Tom Cruise.
Well, to be fair, they took that in a
thing
very
I'm
different
talking
direction, but
Mummy with
Yeah, I
Tom
didn't watch
Cruise,
it,
or Ricky D. I'm sure if you said to Josh the new Star Wars trilogy, he would say yes, exactly. That's clearly that.
Force Awakens was a direct ripoff of A New Hope, like through and through. I have a list of all the similarities, and I'm pretty sure it's over 100. All the similarities between The Force Awakens and A New Hope.
And
It is a lot. It is a blatant ripoff.
That list is probably the one that JJ used to make the movie.
Probably. Like for me, he's like, I gotta have a bar scene. I gotta have a new droid. I gotta have some sort of mystery character. I gotta have some sort of battle. One of the main characters has to die. Like,
So
it's like taking the original outline of something and putting it into a new movie and changing the names.
Right. So you both seem to be agreeing that it's an intention thing and it's a heart thing. Like if there's good intention,
Yeah.
there's heart in it, and somebody clearly was, had a vision that they wanted executed. That's kind of, as long as they're not saying I'm the first person to come up with these ideas ever,
There's
then
that.
Right.
you guys you're good with them paying homage to that. So
Well, I mean, to be fair, someone
okay.
could come in. I mean, there's bad filmmakers. I mean, yeah, that's
Right.
skill and talent plays a huge part, because you could come in and say, I love all these movies, I'm going to make my own version, but you're just going to hit all the same beats again.
Right. So that
Well, it's like Ryan Johnson coming out making Knives Out and being like, "Oh, this is my own original storyline." No, that is a blatant ripoff of Murder on the Orient Express. But I digress.
Well, we're going to have that podcast on another day. Them's fighting nerds. I see another episode of
Oh,
that
really?
coming
let's do
out.
that. Let's do that
I
because
like
have no
Knives
frame of
Out. Don't get me
reference.
wrong, but I don't like the fact that everyone liked to think that was some sort of original freaking concept.
But the twists were completely different, weren't they?
Do you guys remember when that one listener got really upset at us for calling Murder on the Orient Express a book? Like they went on Twitter and they were like, I was listening to your episode and then you referred to this as a book, and so I had to just stop and send you this message. I thought it was great. I would
Sorry,
actually love
random
to hear you
Twitter.
guys again to that point. I'd love to hear you guys talk about it later because I have no frame of reference. But it leads me to a question for my friend Ricky D. Ricky D from Best Flicks with Ricky D. Do you think Highlander was just made without heart? What do you think? What do you think it is about Highlander that just you were like, there's nothing about it that has?
You guys have had this conversation. There's a whole podcast wherever
You're
you
right,
find
you're
your
right.
podcast.
I
You
just
just
had
go
to ask,
check
I
out
had to
Sudden
ask.
Butt.
I just had to ask.
I think my main issue is that it lacked talent or creativity, or I don't think it
know.
hit the marks that it was trying to.
Guys, I didn't get to be on that episode, and I am doing all I can not to just
okay,
derail
it's
this
okay.
entire
It's
podcast
okay,
into
Cameron.
another
I
Highlander
appreciate you
podcast.
being a better host than me. I'm just going to tell Ricky D to go IMDb Clancy Brown. Okay, so
All right, I do really want to get to the midpoint because I want to know what you guys thought was in that shed when they opened up the door to the shed in the woods. But before we get there, there's a couple points I want to hit. We talked about Grant and how he had these moments of redemption. We talked about the one where he chooses not to cheat on Elizabeth Banks, and so good for him. My favorite though is after he's the symbiote and he's thinking about impregnating her, and it's just this bizarrely, disturbingly, weirdly sweet moment when he decides, no, I won't impregnate my wife with the alien slug babies. I'm going to go find the town slut, not to slut shame, but Brenda is a woman of loose morals for many reasons. I'm going to go impregnate her. Like, that was the sweet choice in that moment. And that's just the sort of bizarre
And that's,
emotions you feel in this movie.
That's what really made me start to really enjoy this movie was the scene where they go out into the woods and they start making out, and then he's like, oh, I can't do this because cheaters suck. They're the fucking worst people in the world, and they all need to just go away. And I think that him emphasizing that he's not one of those is wonderful.
And that was one of those moments in the movie where you're like, oh man, maybe this movie's gonna be super uncomfortable because if he cheats on her, then I hope he dies, and I don't really care about his character for the rest of it. Oh, he didn't. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm glad.
Well,
I'm
this
glad
is
about
where
that.
he
And then-
gets away with certain tropes. Like, he can be super tropey in other areas, and then he has all these moments of really defying expectations in others.
Yeah,
And I think
because when you outkick your coverage, you recognize that. You get to the end of that field and there's nobody there to block for you. So he's like, no, I need to keep being married to the hottest woman in this town who asks nothing of me except that I keep existing. That's a very easy thing to do. So I need to keep doing that. And to your point, like, I don't know if I've ever had the thought in my head before of, oh, look at that. He just lovingly retracted his tentacles. Like, not a phrase that's ever passed through my head before,
you
but
need
it
to watch
happened in
more
this
tentacle
movie.
porn, my friend.
I
It's the best.
suppose.
I'm
but
spacing on what it's called. Josh,
There's not a lot of.
help here.
Octopussy? Oh no,
Why
that's a
are-
James
No,
Bond movie.
no, not,
Why are you guys? Why do you have? Anyways.
When you hit a certain point, Jesse, you
haven't-
you look for anything.
Okay. I believe you. I haven't
You reach
seen
the
it.
end of the internet and you just got to go down that alley.
Woo,
God, I hope I never get to the end of the internet. There's not a lot of okay. I think our friend Callie in the chat has you hooked up. Do you mean
I believe
hentai?
is it hentai? I thought that was a little more innocent. Is hentai not, or is hentai the straight tentacle porn?
I have.
That was the first word that came to my mind, but I didn't want to insult the true anime fans out there.
We here at Sudden But Inevitable are not discriminatory. If you out there listening in podcast land or watching would like to Google either of those phrases, I'm sure they would get you what you need.
Again,
I
I'm
don't
not
want to
slut
shame
shaming
you.
or kink
Exactly.
shaming. I'm not here to do that.
I would never do that. Oh, Callie's mother, who's also in our chat, Rona, says, lovingly retracted his tentacles. I once dated that guy. I love our live
What?
chat, you guys. I gotta say, we have the best live chat in the world. This is one of my favorite parts about this podcast. But
Is
Yeah,
that from
okay.
a smut book?
so no, that's something I said like 2 minutes ago.
Oh my God, I'm
you were
sorry.
probably producing the show. But
Yes.
so we have a lot of these moments though with Rooker's character
Once
where it's
dated
like,
that guy.
we just need him to not be super evil. He can be and the evil in him pretty clearly only comes from the slug, right? Because he's maybe a jerk, but he's not evil until
He's not going
he's
to
been
murder
possessed.
the entire
Yeah,
town.
till he's been possessed, and then that's what
Right.
he's going to do.
And then, but
Okay.
then even the slug, that's its life cycle. That's how it reproduces.
So at some point, Nathan Fillion and Elizabeth Banks become the main characters of this movie, and I am totally here for that. And was
Until some
super
random
happy,
teenage girl becomes the main character
Which-
for
A focal
a
point for the
short
yeah,
amount of
what?
time. Yeah.
which I went. Did we meet her before that? I cannot
Nope.
actually not remember.
Technically, she's in the school scene where we get the gender swapped Indiana Jones introduction to
Okay. Yes.
Elizabeth Banks' character. I think she's in there, but I forget about it every time.
I think you're 100% on that. And it was like I wasn't mad. I was just like, why is this happening? Oh, because it's like a 80s horror movie. That's why. Okay.
Well,
Cool.
it's
We're
definitely
good
one
to
of those
go.
things like on paper it should not work. If I were reading the script, I'd be like, James Gunn, come on, man, take another pass. You've got multiple protagonists and you're just jumping into these random characters halfway through, but somehow it gets away with it. And I don't know
For a couple
why.
of seconds, it doesn't. Like for the first 40 seconds of the first minute of that, I was fully unimmersed. What's the word for that? Desubmerged. I was dry. I was like, why is this happening? Who is this girl? Did I miss something? Was I not paying attention? It's possible. Oh, okay. Wait a minute. This makes sense. I feel like she's vaguely familiar. Also, it's an 80s movie. 80s movies do that, and there's supposed to be a teenage girl in an 80s horror movie. So up to this point, now it makes sense. Now it
I
makes
think that's
good
why it
sense to
works
me.
for me is because I remember her from the dinner table scene where she's introduced. I go like,
Okay.
oh yeah, we're coming back to this family, and at first you think, okay, here's going to be like the slasher flick moment. Here's the girl in the bath. She's going to get eaten. That's all she's here for. And so then again, it's just kind of subverting those expectations.
Rona says it may have been in the 80s, actually, come to think of it. And Callie says, I have so many questions, Mom.
Me too.
But we get this where, this girl. Okay, before we get to the girl, let's talk about Nathan Fillion.
Mhm.
I love Nathan Fillion to death. He let the Canadian come through a little strong. Now, to be clear,
They
to
were
be
filming in
fair,
Canada, so
They were filming in Canada, and the Southern American accent is not that. Did you date Davy Jones? The Southern American accent, or the American accent in the
Like the
South. I don't know
monkey?
how to
Oh, right.
phrase that, but the American South accent is not super dissimilar from the Canadian drawl in some ways. So I'm
Right.
sure that Gunn just told him like, hey, overplay it here and underplay it here. But there was definitely a couple of swears where I was like, Nathan, that's how a Canadian says it, buddy. Which I love, by the way. I love that. I have no problem with that. So Elizabeth Banks and curlers. My train of thought has been derailed.
well, speaking
So
of
Nathan Fillion,
Nathan,
by the way, was Malcolm Reynolds. I the whole movie, I was like, is that just he's just being Sheriff Malcolm right now. Like,
Oh, I see what you're saying. I was
Yeah.
like, Josh, we just talked about this, but what you're saying is the characters are basically the same.
yeah, it was the
in
same.
there,
Like
and
he had the same
sorry.
jacket and everything, like the same color, clothes, and like
Similar
he
firearms.
said the same one-liners in this movie that he would have
Same
in
attitude.
Firefly. Like
Same
it was,
attitude.
he was the same guy.
That
Ooh,
was
you
totally
guys-
my first thought. I did start thinking though, like, I mean, Mal is a more complex character. Mal definitely has a darker side to him. Mal has the trauma of the war behind him. And that's when I realized who Bill Party, the sheriff, Nathan Fillion's character in this film, is. He is basically Mal if the Browncoats had won the Battle of Serenity Valley and had gone on to win the war. I don't think Mal would have gone to space then. He would have gone and settled down on some backwater planet and become a sheriff and lived a good life because
I like that. I like that
because
multiversal.
that would not have been taken from him. You can't take the sky from me. That's why he goes to space. And then that's when it hit me, guys. In like an alternate universe of Firefly where that happened, this is a sequel to an alternate universe of Firefly. Slither is where Mal moved to a little town that became much like Earth that once was, to the point where they were manufacturing Mr. Pibb, yes. And then the Alliance, in one last desperate attempt to get them, sent an asteroid full of slugs at them. So we are still in the Firefly universe.
It's going to be my headcanon now. And
Right?
and here's the other thing.
There's got to be some fan fiction somewhere, right?
He changed his name because he knew he had enemies from his time in the war.
The thing that I immediately thought when you said that was, oh, what if James Gunn just did a one-off Firefly movie?
Oh, you know what? He could pull it off, I think.
He could pull it off.
Oh my gosh.
Dudes, plural, guys, bros. I think that might. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I don't mean to.
We
You
know
know-
James Gunn is lurking in the comment section right
Yes.
now
Right,
because he
right.
did
Say
share
hello.
our
Say hello.
viewers.
I'm here
Listen.
there.
Dude.
Let's
Just-
do this.
And we don't even. You don't have to put us in the movie, but we would love to go to the premiere. I'm
We'll
Or
just
just
saying.
be in the credits, maybe.
No.
Mm,
Just
A
wanna
character
go-
named
you
after
know-
us.
James Gunn apparently, because as in Slither, but in Slither, that he really likes to play the music from the soundtrack over the radios. So why not just have a podcast playing over the radio that they're listening to? You know what I mean?
A Firefly
Throwing that out
podcast.
there.
In the next James Gunn movie, it's like 4 jerks talking about James Gunn movies on the. Actually, I wouldn't put that past him in not in like a mean way, but in like an awesome,
A
cool-
meta way.
Yeah, in a meta way.
Yeah.
He was the science teacher in this movie, right?
Yeah.
Or the
yeah.
Oh my
other
God.
teacher that worked
He's-
with.
So
Elizabeth
I don't.
Banks.
Spoiler alert. He's my favorite character of this movie because he's just such a drone.
He was.
Like, even when Elizabeth Banks leaves him, he's still talking to himself.
he is. Yeah.
He was puppy dog eyes
love
the
it.
whole time though at her, which is understandable, I think, if we're being real. So, but
Oh,
yeah, so Cameron had mentioned the teenage girl who is suddenly the main character of this movie for 15 or 20 minutes. Can we talk about this scene, because I'm really a sucker for that's the scene from the poster. That's so cool. They're gonna do the thing in the and
Roll credits.
I got to tell you, I'm really happy that they did not cross a specific line with a slug and a girl in a bath that could have
Oh,
been
but they got
crossed.
close.
I'm just
Yeah.
they
Me
got
too.
close to that line, and they tread that line. They slithered right along that line. real
Sperm
well.
worm.
And I appreciate how they dealt with that. Was it gross that it eventually went into her mouth? Yes. Was it cool that we got that little glimpse of it sort of taking over her brain and basically being the Venom symbiote, like
Bringing her into the
before
board.
before it got to Earth? It was like from this other terrible planet, and all it did was survive, and it built itself a rat king, and then came to Earth on a meteor. And I just the mechanic by which that takes place, right? The slug in the throat, that she's trying to pull it out of her throat. It's very Giger. Is it pronounced H.R. Giger's Alien?
I
Right,
do
with the
Geiger,
second
but-
mouth.
Geiger.
How does she pull it out? Why does she
She
able
like
to
gets
do
her
that?
nails in there. She like
Oh.
puts her nails in that thing and like starts making it all
Yeah.
like, I don't know, it like
Her
hurts.
little
the thing
unicorn
in there.
nails.
That's right. Chekhov's manicure.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was. It just.
Thank you for setting me up, Josh.
It was. Twist My Arm podcast should not be allowed to chat on my
Ricky,
Wow,
get off
that
the
was-
chat.
That
I
makes
am the
mo-
producer today.
that makes way more sense to know that Ricky is doing that in the chat and not you, Josh. Okay. But yeah, so it's there's some conceit there, but it's you get the homage to Alien, you get this glimpse into basically the lore dump of the movie, because let's be honest, we're all nerds. Once that happened, the scene happened, we knew the plot that she's about to tell them in the car, right? Where she goes, he's from another planet, he did this, he did that. We knew all that as soon as we saw it because we're nerds and we got it. We understood. It was all told visually. But to have them restack it is perfect because then you get a character that goes, yeah, if I had any time to think about what's happening, I'd be super fascinated, but I don't, and I'm not.
Yes.
Which is great. I mean, that's the Han Solo of a movie, right? The character that's cooler than the movie that goes, why is any of the stuff happening in this? And I have to comment on it. That's our
I loved
audience
all of his
stand-in.
one-liners. And going back to where Cameron wanted to go in the barn, like when they're like that character had the best lines that whole time. Like what
The
the
mayor.
fuck is
The
happening?
mayor, yeah. We're talking about the mayor.
Oh my god.
All right, yeah, we're in the
And
barn.
that-
So,
and
guys, they were approaching the
Mhm.
barn. So far, we've had some creeping weirdness in this movie. Oh, we did see like Thing Grant out in the fields being super gross. But what did you guys expect when they opened that door and there's the shot of their expressions? What were you thinking the next shot was going to
So-
be?
I knew that that it had to be some kind of baby alien thing, right? Because that's why he picked not his wife. And I didn't know if I was expecting eggs on the ground or if I was expecting some kind of alien versus predator like tube and webbing style stuck to a wall gross system. But I'll be honest, I didn't expect it to be Brenda
Seven?
as a balloon. And I laughed, and I did not expect to laugh at somebody in that kind of pain and just ultimate discomfort, right? But the way it catches you off guard and the absurdity of the entire movie and the situation up to that point leads you to go, sure, why?
Well, and then
why
her
would she
line.
be a balloon?
Why not?
What's her line there?
I didn't
I'm
write
so
it down.
hungry. Or no, she's like something's wrong with me.
Yeah,
And I
no
think that, like,
shit.
Exactly. That encapsulates the whole movie as you were presented with this grotesque monstrosity of something. And you
love
don't,
how
your brain
Nathan
doesn't know
Fillion-
how to process it first. Do I laugh? Do I throw up? Am I in shock and horror? Is this just like, that's not how the human body would react? So is this badly done? And then she says that line and it just lets you know, no, you laugh and you have a good time and you go with this
I think I did one of
over
those-
the top bizarreness.
Oh, like one of those kind of, oh my god, this is crazy. And then Nathan Fillion's like, yeah, something.
Well, and the absurdity there is that it's also believable because I mean, there's stuff
In this
that I have-
universe, yes.
I mean, dude, in a universe with humans, like there's stuff that I have ignored about myself for like months at a time. Where when I went and got it taken care of, somebody was like, "Why didn't you come in months ago?" And I was like, "Wasn't paying attention to it. Didn't seem like a problem." Like, oh well, now we have to pull your, for example, I didn't get my wisdoms pulled when I was a kid, so I have to have them scheduled to be out as an adult now, and I've heard it's terrible. And they were like, "Why didn't you do that?" And I was like, "I didn't know I was supposed to." Like, wasn't thinking about it. So to me, it's somewhat believable that a person would be in such denial that because she wasn't dead, right? And she was at a point where she should have naturally thought to herself, I shouldn't be alive. So maybe it's not as bad
Well,
as it
all
looks.
she could
like-
think was, I'm just so hungry. I just can't eat enough.
Well, but she could feel the hunger of the things too. She was like, they are hungry too. Like she
Yeah.
could tell that they were hungry, which, not to pull the parent card or anything, but my wife could tell when my daughter was hungry too when she was pregnant. And there was
So
just
was
one of
Brenda a
those.
better mother to the worms than her own baby? Is that what we're
No,
saying?
because she died.
Well, It's
But she
interesting
gave
that
birth
you
to
would
the
say that.
worms. She died so her worms could live. Meanwhile,
It's interesting
she was
you would
going to
say
have an
that
affair with
because
the baby in the room.
I would say that she is an irresponsible mother at every given opportunity.
Oh.
Like she's
Any chance she got, she chose
willing to
irresponsibility.
yes, she's willing to put in the appearance, so to speak, but not be featured in the band on tour.
But she does make a mean cheese and cracker plate before a torrid affair, so you got to give her that. One of my favorite
Dude.
low-key jokes of the film.
I'll be honest, I'm a sucker for a good plate of cheese and crackers. I'm a pretty basic
Me too.
person, but I like a nice Gruyere.
Had I been
and a
Grant
stone
at
wheat
that moment,
cracker.
I might have put my tentacles away and been like, "Yes, please, Brenda, let's have some cheese and crackers."
Man, Elizabeth Banks and curlers, you guys. All right. So,
But I mean, speaking of that scene, real quick, the seduction of Brenda's scene. I mean, how great was that? The intercutting the mayor's speech with the seduction, and you get the countdown to the tentacles, and then again, like what is basically a rape scene would have been horrifying if not juxtaposed with the hoedown going on.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Well,
it kind of makes it more horrifying, but in a more palatable way.
yeah, and I'll be totally honest. I mean, I definitely read it more as a body horror
Yeah,
moment
sure.
than as a sexual assault moment. I
But
could
she
see
is
it
being
read
violently assaulted one way or another.
right, and she's literally being impregnated against her will. I mean, like, there's there's a lot of stuff to point.
I think
to
that was
but
the
it's-
most disturbing scene for me. I think that was the one scene where I was like, okay, this is a little rough. I'm just gonna look down at Metroid. Like,
Well, and it was also like I understood it as necessary for the movie, right? And as one of the trope, the loving trope inclusions, right? You would have that moment in a 1980s body horror movie, or in a cheerleader horror movie, or that kind of a thing. You'd have a moment like that, and we needed some. This monster needed to be a multi-tiered threat, right? It couldn't just be Grant's a big slug now, because then the answer is light that guy on fire and run away. But if he can also take over a town's population surreptitiously in a way that you're not 100% sure that they've all been taken over, that's a problem, right? If he can replicate at a ridiculous rate, that's going to be a problem, right? So they had to give him these other tiers. They had to make him able to impregnate people. He can take over their minds, and he's got a main host, right? And that would be Grant. And Grant does most of the thinking. It would appear Grant and the Beast do most of the thinking, and they share control and maybe even fight each other for control a little bit. So so we're in the barn. We figure this thing out. Let's say Brenda is no more.
that was crazy too. The whole like ripping situation where she's like, oh my god, something's happening, and she kept like moving forward. Like, so
Stop
for
that,
me,
Brenda,
in this
stop that.
scene, yeah, in this scene, I couldn't stop thinking about A, Willy Wonka, and you're turning violet, Violet, and B, Seven with the gluttony guy. It was just so big and horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
But
It really was. The scene was Willy
like-
Wonka meets Seven.
seriously, but like when she
Willy
starts
Wonka and the Seven Deadly
hair?
Sins Factory.
title, send it.
It's a long one.
But when she like does the tearing thing, I mean, that was rough, and you knew right then and there, like, oh, here we go. This is gonna be fun. This is
And
where
now-
all these cops die.
Now there's a new threat to the film. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interestingly,
End of Act 2.
originally the mayor was supposed to die there too, but James Gunn realized like the rest of the movie just wasn't as funny, and so he kept him alive. And suddenly the second half of the film came back to life.
Does he? He dies, right? Or
Oh
did
yeah,
he-
Nathan
Well,
Fillion shoots him in the head when he asks
Oh,
him
that's
to.
right. That's right.
Please kill me. Bam.
Yeah.
Now-
yeah.
To that point, really quickly, there were a couple of headshots in this movie, which is another thing, that you got to have in a movie that's got all the pieces of a horror movie in it. And I have seen a lot of headshots. I've seen a lot of zombie movies. I've played a lot of zombie video games. I've played a lot of shooting video games. The headshots in this were still pretty satisfying without being like, overly gratuitous. I feel like they were
Except when
well
the worm
done.
slithers
Well, the worm's
out.
the best part. Yeah.
Right, that's
Yeah,
what
I'd
I'm
say they
saying.
were a
Like,
little CGI for me, but the worm makes it all
right.
worthwhile.
Yeah, like the
2004, of
the
course.
practical
is, yeah.
effects in the movie are
2006.
not necessarily. It's not like The Thing, right, where it's 90% practical effects or
Right.
anything like that. Or actually, The Thing might be more than that. But it's just, yeah. I don't know. I normally it's a thing that would turn me off. Like, oh, this movie didn't need that. But I was like, hey, the movie would have that, and it makes sense because the slug attaches to the base of the brain, so they want to destroy that, and that makes sense, So I totally get it.
Mhm.
But we had, so then Nathan Fillion is, gets this lore dump. They're driving back into town. They decide, okay, we have to go kill Grant if this is gonna end ever. And we get the aforementioned grenade. They go pick that up. They go back. I think here's a thing that I noticed that was distinctly James Gunn, and I'm not 100%, but it feels like it's distinctly James Gunn, is where he uses moments of like physical defeat as punchlines or as counterpoints to confident one-liners. Because it's a thing that I think happens in Guardians where one character will like say something really cool. They'd be like, yeah, we're the Guardians of the Galaxy. And then they'll get like hit in the back and they fall down and out of frame, and they're not cool anymore. And that happened in this movie a few points, specifically with Nathan Fillion. Like, he's like, you can't fuck with me. And then he goes to throw the grenade. He goes, yeah, I can. And then he gets immediately like knocked down and the grenade goes flying out of his hand. So it's like there's almost this like physical irony of like, no, reality sucks and you're going to get stopped here. Our friend Callie in the chat says the German word for leech is Blutegel, basically blood eel. When I first saw those worm things, I was thinking this is what I would expect a Blutegel to look like if I did not know what it was. That's creepy. You can keep those to yourself. I don't want those anywhere near me. But Cameron, do you know what I'm talking about with this like physical, like,
Yeah, I do. I mean,
of like defeat or something right after a punchline?
I mean, in all honesty, I think that's an effect that a lot of filmmakers use. I immediately thought of Thor Ragnarok. They do that a lot as well. I mean, it's the classic set up the badass and then pull the rug out from under them. And it's something I think Nathan Fillion especially is very good at. I mean, I think that's something we saw a lot of in Firefly as well. But I agree that James Gunn is no stranger to that. He does not shy away from that setup and delivery.
Now, I'll be honest with you. I thought we were going to lose Nathan Fillion. I was like, he's definitely going to die. Like,
My very first note was, oh, it's Nathan Fillion. He's going to die very soon.
that's the good assumption to make. Like, everything I've seen, well, the movie I saw recently with him in it, he died in like the first 10 or 11 minutes, I think. So I was, Callie, don't do that. This is not the show for that. Don't do that.
It is though.
I figured he's doing so well. I love the character. I'm having a ton of fun with him. The right thing to do would be that he gets to end up with Elizabeth Banks. Of course, the movie won't give me that. They're going to kill him. They're definitely going to kill him. He's totally going to die. Look at him. There he goes. He's dead. Oh my God, he lived. I'm so happy. I'm so happy.
See, I was on the opposite end of that. I was like, the two people that are going to live in this are going to be Nathan Fillion and Elizabeth Banks. Wasn't
Well,
expecting the teenager to still be there, but like.
So as a person who has seen more horror movies than me, you probably have a better sense of, final characters,
I guess,
final girls,
maybe,
survivors, that kind of a thing.
I think it's that like in that first opening scene with Fillion and the other cop, I was like, well, the side cop's going to die and Fillion's going to stay alive. Like, that was my immediate thought.
My thing, even watching it this time, because it's been well over a decade since I've seen it, before this watch, I was actually a little surprised when everyone was still dead at the end. I thought once they killed Grant that the worms would come like pooping out of them, or they'd puke them up or something, and everyone would be back. But no, it makes more sense because we've seen that the worms burrow into their brains. Like, they would be dead, and they all dead. That Batgirl's family dead. Creepy twins,
yeah.
Everyone,
dead.
People who have grown up in this small town have ever known in their lives, DEAD.
Yep.
Well, those poor little kids, like I thought they were gonna at least kind of make it through. I mean, how are you gonna?
No, I was I was on the same page as Cameron, where
Man.
as soon as I saw those twins, I was like, "Oh, they're gonna be evil, and that means they're gonna die." So
I thought they'd be better once the worms fell out, but no such luck. But I am glad that they never consummated Parties and Starla's relationship. I'm glad that we got like a half confession from Fillion, and that's it. That's as far as their relationship went, because they did
There
not
wasn't
have
much
time
of
to
a
deal with
love
those emotions during this film.
Yeah.
well, that feels that feels realistic too, right?
Right.
Because he would want her to know, like, hey, maybe 2 years, however long from now, when you're like feeling like a normal person, hit me up. Like let's hang out, like, because you just lost your husband, but like I've always held this flame. What did they? He said something for him, like you'll hold a torch for that woman longer than.
Oh
something.
yeah,
He
yeah.
had a great line. I don't remember what it was, but we'll add it in post, or we'll take that part out. So I just okay. So we're coming up on the end of the movie. Is there anything specifically scene wise or anything like that you guys would like to talk about before we get to our segments? Ricky D, let's start with you.
All right, we've been asking a lot of difficult questions today, and I think I need to ask everybody: would you commit a lifetime of intimacy with the Slither monster if it saved every creature on Earth?
Like a one-on-one romance, you're saying? Like it's just me and the Slither
Yeah,
creature
like you,
and
Elizabeth
everybody else?
Banks.
So you're saying put ourselves in Elizabeth Banks' shoes,
Yep.
and
I mean, ultimately,
Now, which stage, Ricky D? Which stage of the Slither monster?
Yeah, is
he's
he
going to be
using me?
continuously evolving the more he kills.
Oh,
Well, but that's what
oh.
I'm saying. So, like, am I just his girlfriend and I'm going around with him, or is he using me to generate more spawn, or is it strictly forever a me and him thing at all times?
You are his intimate life partner. I'm going to
Okay,
say he's not going to use you to create more Slither monsters. It's
Okay.
just your love will
Yeah.
hold him back from killing everything.
I think that given enough time, that's exactly the correct noble sacrifice to make. And I think, if Elizabeth Banks hadn't just been pushed into the situation so wetly, maybe she would have made a different choice. I mean, she clearly, at the end, you could tell that she could tell that Grant was still in there. And I think that the hardest, the roughest part of this was that he said, I tried not to change. And it's like, dude, it's a alien frigging parasite in your brain. Like, you've no control. But that's the most human thing about this movie, right? Is that we have no control over that. We're going to change over time. We're going to become different people. And that might affect the people in our lives. That might make them feel differently about us. And we could tell them, hey, I tried not to change, but that just happens, right, over time.
nope,
They
I'm
went-
taking a grenade in that room with me.
They
Nope.
Right, and there's a.
Were you expecting this deep of an answer, Ricky D, from that question?
I'm not that surprised.
Okay. You
Well,
spent a lot of time podcasting with Jesse.
I mean, well, I feel like it's kind of the point the movie is trying to make with that,
Yes.
right? Is like the dedication here, the one-on-one dedication is part of this story. To Ricky D's point, so I think that makes it a good question.
Well, she's not even trying to save the rest of the world. Like that scene in the field, she's just trying to save Grant.
Yeah,
She thinks she can save him.
And that's the thing, is that she isn't like, ooh, he's gross. Like, now that he's an alien, I'm no longer dedicated to him. Like, she goes the extra mile. Like, there's the line. Thank you, Callie. I'm surprised you're able to lift a mug. You've been carrying that torch for so long. Okay, that mug, by the way, is this the movie that has the mug that says "I drink coffee"? Like,
I don't know.
I believe the first person that he talks to is drinking a mug. Maybe it's a guy at the police station, and the mug says "I drink coffee" on the front of it.
It's pretty good.
I think that was in this movie. I've seen a lot of movies and TV over the course of the last 3 or 4 days. Slither twice, but I believe that's what this was in. I'll have to look that up. Wow, I feel bad. Anyways, Callie D answered your question, Ricky D. She said, nope, everyone can die. That's fine.
No, you just no way. You just gain his trust for a minute, and then you partner with Nathan Fillion, and you get some sort of bomb to put in there in a teddy bear, and you just call it good.
Well, I'm going to come between you guys. I think this is a numbers game because Ricky D, you said that. So by having this intimate relationship with him, he's not going to kill all life, but you also say he's going to keep killing and growing. So what are the numbers
I think
here?
I think I misspoke. I was taking things. I was trying to answer before I was thinking. If you do commit to this lifetime of intimacy, his evolution is going to stop, I guess, because I'm saying he is going to stop killing.
Okay.
And yeah.
So
that's
Ricky
what I
is saying if he's a pile of manslug, like he's at the point where they found him in the field.
Yep.
And at that point you can say, hey, just hang out with me, let's be cool, and by doing so save the human race. Are you down?
Nope.
Baby, I saw how articulated those tentacles were. I'm there, I'm down. You know.
Did you see how long his mouth was?
We're going to form an OnlyFans page and we're going to make some bank.
Look, I'm all for tentacle porn, but like that is a little much for me. The watching it is on a screen.
Josh, the expression on your face just then.
Yeah.
Josh's plan.
Bottle that expression.
I want to point out the genuine nature that Josh just expressed. I would rather not be grossed out than save the human race.
But
throwing that out there.
Josh's plan does still involve some form of sacrifice, and it does involve saving the human race. It's not quite the answer I was looking for, but he's still revolving around that area.
You know, just running in there with a grenade and being like, I like you
So
still,
you're saying-
kinda. Boom.
He answered slightly outside the spirit of the question, but you'll allow it, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Is there anything else you guys feel like we have to discuss before we get to our wonderful weekly segments? Josh.
The deer fight. The deer fight was one of my favorite scenes, and then at the end when Nathan Fillion says, "Why don't you tell her how I saved you from that deer?" is phenomenal.
That's good. That's good.
I
That deer fight also, like, because you could tell the deer's not the greatest prop, but it's Nathan Fillion 100% who sells that scene.
It was one of the worst.
He kicks the shit out of himself and makes it look like it's that deer doing it.
I was just going to say there were notes of liar, liar, a la law firm bathroom to that performance.
Oh yeah. I'm kicking my own ass.
It was
You're
the
right.
physical
You're
comedy on Nathan Fillion is not something that you get to see all the time, but the note that I made regarding that specifically was this man falls to his knees in defeat in a more evocative way than 90% of actors I've ever seen in my life, with the possible exception of anyone? Tom
Bruce
Hiddleston.
Campbell?
Oh, Bruce Campbell's pretty good too.
I
but
really want to see
Tom
Bruce
Hiddleston
Campbell and
is
Nathan Fillion enough.
constantly hitting his knees or getting back up and flipping his hair. But
Oh, true. Sure.
Callie
I do
says-
want to get to Callie's point, but first let's start with the first part. I mean, we don't need to go into depth, but we need to acknowledge the squid arm. Like that effect, speaking of good practical effects, was amazing.
Very, very, very well done. Are we sure? So that was 100% prosthetic?
Yeah, because I've seen some behind the scenes. Not when it's growing around her neck, I don't think, but when he runs out and the arm like smashes the lamp on the way out.
He's like Stretch Armstrong, all like
yes,
can't get his arm back in.
And then to Callie's point, I do love later when they've got the board of the city and they've got little squid stickers up for where he's attacked. It's a great little touch.
Nathan Fillion's first reaction when he sees that stretched out fist, just, I'm sorry, what? Like, and then Callie says when they entered the barn and they're playing rock, paper, scissors to see who has to go in, and then the other cop cheats. She says there is a special pit in hell for people who cheat at rock, paper, scissors. I agree with you. He waited until they both shot and then changed his throw. So that was kind of the only way you can cheat at that game.
There's a really
very
fun
dishonorable.
There's a really fun rock paper scissors scene in the Cowboy Bebop live action Netflix series.
I'll be getting to it.
Yeah.
We don't want to spoil anything for Cameron.
Not doing
but
it. Not doing
If
it.
you have seen, let's say, I don't know, the first 2 episodes of the Cowboy Bebop live-action Netflix series, which are called Cowboy Gospel and Venus Pop, then you should go to your favorite podcasting app and look up Sudden But Inevitable and listen to our most recent bonus episode, which covers both of those. We got a little bit early access, and we had an absolute blast. Spoiler alert. Josh, is there anything else you feel like we have to hit before we get to our segments?
I just gotta hit that bumper.
My friend Cameron, as our wonderful guest, is there anything you would like to discuss before we get to the segments?
Not too much. I just want to spend a little bit more time back in the bathroom, in the bathtub with the bath girl. You'd mentioned you love when we get to the poster scene of a movie, and yeah, I do love that about this. I admit I was kind of wondering watching this film. I was like, why Slither? Slither's only like part of the movie. I mean, the slugs are only like one of 3 parts of the life cycle. They're only in a quarter of the film. I guess that this is the scene that inspired the whole film. The first image James Gunn had in his mind was a girl with a worm in her mouth trying to burrow its way to her brain and pulling it out with blood squirting everywhere. And then he said the title came shortly after that. So I guess that was the impetus, and maybe that's why this scene is used on all the branding and everything. And it's the kind of the most classic horror movie kind of moment of the film, as we mentioned. But
that's
in there, I
why
Go
that
ahead.
girl became the main character because he
That's right.
started. That's where he started with the story. That makes total sense.
She's also the the teenage exposition of the. I mean, that's why the character's there. Like that's why she shows up, so she can start giving the exposition. And again,
Yeah.
that shouldn't work, but somehow it does. Like you said, it kind of works. I love that worm. I mean, the worms don't have a lot of personality, but I feel like that one does. You know, he gets in the water and he's like, "Oh shit, I'm not near her mouth. I gotta swim. I gotta learn to swim." This is the worm's first time just diving in, and he makes it work. And then even after he gets thrown against the wall and like broken and bruised and stabbed by her manicured nails, he's still limping its way to her. It's still gonna get in there and burrow its way in.
I don't know.
I love that
Okay.
worm. I don't know what its name is, but
That's what I was gonna say. Okay, is it
Todd.
Is it like the kind of squeaky sound that it makes, or is it the diminutive size? Because there's a couple of shots where the squiddy worm slimy slugs are kind of cute. Like
yeah.
there's 1 or 2 shots. Where
mean, I
was
might
like,
have one
"Oh,
as-
look at that little guy.
As a pet, as long as I knew it wasn't going to get out of its cage.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
keep
You,
it
like,
in a
had it-
glass box to mess with people.
Had it declawed or something.
De-toothed, defanged.
Nah.
I don't know.
I think
And
it's
then
defanged.
Kill it with fire. Kill all of them with fire. No, no. Oh, you guys are crazy.
That's what I'm saying. Like maybe I do like horror movies, and I just didn't know. Like, but
you got
I
to see
did-
the right
but
kind.
I understand that they're gross. I was mostly just saying like James Gunn is a master of tone, and he used the tone of a couple shots to make me feel sympathy for this alien monster. So go ahead,
right.
Cameron.
That's right. Speaking of sympathy for alien monsters, I do love the twins. Shortly after that scene, where the dad, I love whenever monsters try to bluff for some reason. Like that's a thing that happens in a few horror movies. And when the dad is like, poison ivy, and when the girls go, "We're itchy," one of the funniest lines in the movie.
I'm not a monster.
Yeah.
An
Alien monster? No.
No,
If
not
if
me,
You said
no.
alien monster. That's not me. No.
I mean, it's the Edgar suit. The entire Edgar suit is why that character works so well. Love that.
Grant trying to deny it the whole time was like, "No, I'm good. I called the doctor. We're fine."
It's a bee sting.
Pussing out of his forehead.
That particular scene, Josh, I love that scene because it's like you get an emotional pang with Elizabeth Banks when she goes, "Hey, that thing you told my husband about," and the doctor's like, "What are you talking about?" And the music goes like, "Wang." It's very
That doctor.
like,
Who played the
Twilight
doctor?
Zone.
Who was
Oh,
that doctor?
Do I know this? Did I see the doctor?
I don't know, but I'm
probably
sure
not.
you're
If
about
you
to
just
tell
hear his
me.
voice. It is Ricky D.
Is it Haig Sutherland?
No, we were talking about him earlier.
No.
Cut this part.
Sorry, I must have missed something. What's
Sean
up?
Connery.
Rob Zombie.
Oh.
Oh,
That was Rob Zombie on the phone.
that's cool.
Yep. Just
That's
got
way
it.
Sorry, I
cameo.
totally missed that. I'm looking at a different cast list.
way
of
cool.
people.
Sorry, Ricky.
That's
So it was,
cool,
it was a bad
though.
throw. It was a bad pitch.
Yeah.
I actually don't like his movies, but I don't dislike all of his
This is
music.
this
So
is where he
I
got the
like-
idea for Living Dead Girl, right? No, I'm kidding. That's way before this movie came out.
I do
and then
wonder
the-
though if he saw this movie and went, "Oh, I could remake Halloween," and James Gunn was like, No, that's not what I've done." And in fact, and Rob Zombie was like, "Yeah, remake Halloween," and they just walked away. Like maybe that's what happened.
No, Rob, Mr. Zombie. No,
And I'll put my
Excuse me.
wife in the movie. It'll be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
try the monsters instead, Rob.
Put my wife in that too.
And then my only other note, I do just want to admire the acid effect. Is super fun. Nathan Fillion really good at dodging it apparently, and it's just the practical effect
Oh,
on
yeah.
the poor deputy when
And-
she gets spit on.
And definitely another thing to put on the list of, oh, yes, put that in the movie too. Of course, put that in the movie too. Like,
Of course, there's acid venom.
yeah, the first time you see it, you're like, okay. But then, I mean, it all works, right? Because it's an alien that's designed to advance and evolve at all times, so it's nothing outside of sci-fi that we can't accept, right?
What I
It's
love, because you
all-
see it at first, you see it hit her neck, and you're like, "Oh, that's not going to be good. That's going to dissolve." Oh no, it's going the other way. Oh, it's getting bigger. Oh,
It's intuitively bad. I just don't know which direction. But it is bad.
Yeah.
I know that. Well, you guys, this movie is just okay. Before we
I had a
get
blast.
any
Again.
big overarching statements, let's put those statements where they belong, which of course are squarely within the weekly segments that we do here at Sudden But Inevitable. The first of those weekly segments is one that you know very well, and it is called Shot of the Show. Shot of the Show, as you know, is where we share our favorite visual moments from this week's property, the moments that hit us just a little bit harder than the rest. Now, normally what I do here is I just let the guest go, and then I let somebody else go, and then I go last, and this and the other thing. But because this is a little bit different, and I've never seen this movie before, I'm going to use that in my determination of rotation here. So first, of course, we are going to have Cameron go because he is our guest and he's the best looking of all of us. And then we're going to go to Ricky D because he's never seen it. Then we'll go to me because I've never seen it. And then we'll go to Josh because he has seen it before. Not because I want Josh to go last. It's just it makes good logical sense as I have just explained.
I want to give a disclaimer for this too, because some of these shots are pretty nasty. And if you haven't seen this movie and you're just watching this because I don't know,
I think
you're
we should
bored
go
or something,
chronologically.
just know that these are going to be some
Oh.
pretty nasty shots.
I'm willing, to Cameron's point, I'm willing to go chronologically. Josh, are you able to glance at those shots and tell us? Oh, did you put the time codes
would
on them?
be-
Because if you are,
So it would be you, Ricky, me, Cameron.
okay, then let's go with mine first. Thanks, Cameron. Good call.
You're welcome, Jesse.
So mine comes from. I just sent this to you, Josh. It's like 18. something.
Let's see here. Now that I just tear it all down, my bad.
It's okay. This is from
Oh,
very
where's
early on in the movie. I want to say it's 1653. If you get there
Oh, now I've lost it.
before I do, it's okay. We'll put it in post. Anyways, very early on in the movie. This is after Rooker's character Grant has said meat and then proceeded to go to the supermarket and pick up as much meat as he can afford with however much money he happens to have in his pocket at the time, loaded into the back of his stereotypically very new, very clean pickup truck. Did you guys notice that? The pickup truck is very clean. It's very new. It's very stylish. There's no 1631. Perfect. There's no dents in it. There's no dirt to indicate that he uses it for construction or anything like that. He's just a guy with a truck, if you know what I mean. And it is full of just raw meat. And the look on his face, again, Rooker is what makes this movie. Because without him, it's a fun romp through sci-fi tropes and horror. With him, it's a deeply human tale of struggling against the forces of change in a relationship. And you can actually see all of that right there on Michael Rooker's face. He doesn't want to be doing this. He didn't ask to be controlled by an alien parasite that craves raw meat by the ton. But he is, and he has to do this thing while he attempts to hold some semblance of normalcy together in his everyday life. I can't identify with being, controlled by an alien parasite and wanting to consume raw meat, but I can identify with the struggle of, trying to stay who I am over the course of time and through all the stress of a regular life, while also maintaining some semblance of control over said life and happiness for the people in it. So, in a ridiculous shot of a guy with a pile of meat in the back of his pickup truck, you get a lot. And that's kind of emblematic for the movie for me, because it's definitely a pile of tropes and loving letters to things that have been done before, which seems to be a running theme here at Sudden But Inevitable. But it is executed, to Cameron's point, with such panache and mastery of tone that it comes across as just a bucket of enjoyment, personally, for me. Who does that put up next? I think that puts Ricky D up next for shot of the show, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. My shot is just 2 minutes and a few seconds later. I'm at 1844. This is the moment where he's still kind of the change that he's going through is still fairly early on, and he's coming into the house. Elizabeth Banks is in the shower, and he's like, well, now that I am this crazy alien life form, I'm going to have to lay my eggs somewhere. And these creepy tentacles start coming out of his chest, and they kind of look like penises with claws on them, which adds to just this creepiness. And it speaks to the their need for procreation. But it's super gross. It's super creepy. And it's also at this weird redeeming point where Grant, is that his name? Grant? Yeah, Grant.
Yep.
This is also the point where he decides not to fill her full of eggs. This is where he decides to allow her to keep her humanity. And in a way, he's also keeping a little bit of his own humanity.
Right. And that's the first indicator that we get that he has any modicum of control over what's happening to him. And it's our first indicator that it's not that he's in control, but that it's definitely a struggle, and that he's definitely a man of two souls now. And that makes it an excellent pick. Josh, what do you got?
I have such a joke for this because to me it seems like Alan Tudyk made an appearance.
On the screen,
Alan Tudyk played the tentacles.
Try and put together a podcast. You try to make it professional. You try to give good analysis. You try to make people think about what they're saying.
Special guest star Alan Tudyk as the tentacles.
You guys are all welcome for that. Next up is
Josh.
Cameron.
I think. Josh, is your shot
here.
last chronologically?
Oh
I think your
my
shot
God,
is
I
next.
forgot.
Actually,
You're right.
if
I
I'm not
fucked
mistaken.
up.
Really quickly, Ricky D, excellent choice, and I feel like your shot is the perfect segue shot into Josh.
Mm-hmm.
Good
This
point.
shot. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, my shot. I was so surprised at this. It was just like, oh my God, this is, and like I said, I laughed, and then I felt really bad for this girl, and then I was like, oh yeah, no, I don't feel bad for you at all. And then I noticed her little arms getting sucked in on the side, and it made me laugh even more. I don't know, man. This was like the funniest thing to see,
When
and it just like trying to compare it to Willy Wonka and Seven and all that stuff. I was like, no, this is great. This is
when
great.
you were a kid and you had a latex glove and you blew it up with air.
That's
you know,
exactly what this looks like.
Yeah, and like the hand part would get really spherical, and then there would be like these indents where the fingers would end up, and you would poke the fingers into the inflated glove.
And I kept thinking about how much fun it would be to get in this machine as an actor, and to be like, wait, I'm sorry, I'm doing what? Yes, sign me up. I am
And
so.
I have a question here.
This is my next Halloween costume, dude.
Good luck. So Cameron, this looks to be a practical effect to me. Like there's something about the seams and the weight of this effect that look practical to me. There's a lot of
It's gotta be.
of well done veining in this mass of flesh. This is a weird episode of SBI, but do you know, is this a practical effect?
I'm pretty sure. I don't know 100%. I do know that the actress did not have fun being inside of that. She was claustrophobic and very much did not enjoy being inside this ball with her head sticking out and not being able to move. So I know at least part of it, and I'm pretty sure. If I were to guess, I'd guess that what we're looking at as a practical effect. The seams bursting open looked kind of CGI, and of course when she explodes, it's CG. But
Yeah.
I think
Do you have time code on that one, Josh?
I do. My goodness.
Our friend Callie says there's a children's show in Germany called Bernd das Brot, which is about a depressed loaf of bread. He has little arms sticking out at his sides too. Just made me think of that. Okay.
I
Here's a cool
love
thing.
the Germans.
Callie, do you know Gudetama, the lazy egg, who I believe is a Sanrio character? He's much like Hello Kitty. So he's like a little cracked egg yolk, but he's lazy, so he doesn't want to get out of the egg yolk, and he has like a little yellow egg yolk butt crack. He's super cute. Funny thing to be personified, much like a loaf of bread. Weird things that other cultures would pick to give a face and personality to. I'm sorry, Josh, did you mention your time code for that shot?
4627.
Thank you very much. If I'm not mistaken, that does lead us to Cameron's shot of the show, which is afterward.
Quite perfectly. Yeah, this is very near the end when they're infiltrating Grant's house, and he is his body mass has taken over the whole house. It's even extending outside. And we see a portly man in a red robe, disrobe, and just press his naked flesh into Grant, where it starts combining, and he just has a look of pure orgasmic bliss on his face as he becomes one with the Grant being. And this is just the moment in the movie when I could not stop cackling. What the other thing this movie does so well that we haven't mentioned specifically, and which I think all four shots of the show in this order really just illuminated is the gradual ramp up of weirdness. Yes, we start with the creeping horror. Why is this guy being a truckload of meat? And then we get some tentacles coming from somewhere, to Brenda exploding and worms pouring out of her, to zombie deer and zombie twins. And now we have reached peak Slither as this man presses his naked body into Grant's grotesque thing-like form and becomes one with the monster. And I couldn't stop laughing. Like, this is just when the tones come clashing together and exploding in
I have
pure
to agree
cinematic
with
joy.
you 100%, because I was like, oh, this is gross. And you really expect this guy to go, ah, no, like it hurts, right? But for him to have the exact opposite effect reaction is almost worse. Like,
And I don't really think I even noticed his expression until I was getting this still frame and like really appreciated just what a great actor this random dude that they probably found in Canada is for the expression on his face and doing what he is doing.
yeah, we need you for one rear shot, full nudity, and then you're going to be in blobbed, and that's it. And he crushed it, for lack of a better term. And to your point, like, yes, absurdity levels maxed here, right? Like, oh, this is so
To the max.
gross. Now, here's a little bit of inside baseball. When my friend Cameron sent me this shot as his selection for shot of the show, he said, hey, don't worry. If somebody else picked this, I have a backup shot just in case. And then he also immediately sent, I'm pretty sure nobody else picked this one. I was like, yeah, dude,
True
I'm
story.
pretty sure nobody else picked that. But can you imagine I had someone, I almost, as soon as you sent it, was like, I wouldn't put it past that to be Ricky D's selection for shot of the show. But I'm glad. Callie just Googled Gudetama, and honestly, she wants her own slice of bacon to crawl under. Definitely go check out Gudetama. Again, just criminally adorable. So, you guys, I'm really glad to have the three of you gentlemen here with me for this, because this is actually, it's not that it's an entirely new segment, but it is a premiere of a new version of this segment. This segment for movies and not TV series is called No Finer One-Liner. No
A+ on
Finer-
that, by the way.
Oh,
Very
thank you.
well
I
done.
appreciate that. I was proud. No Finer one-liner, in case you have not guessed, is where we share our favorite lines of dialogue from this week's particular film. I don't know that most of us wrote down chronologically where these take place, so we probably don't want to go in chronological order. So what we'll do instead is I will go back to my normal pattern of having Cameron go, and then we'll do Ricky D, then Josh, and then I will go last. So Cameron, if you'd like to share your selection for No Finer one-liner.
Absolutely. This actually works out pretty well because my one-liner follows that image that we just saw. Nathan Fillion and the Batgirl are looking on at this horrific peak slither that is happening, and Nathan Fillion says, "Well, now that is some fucked up shit." More deadpan than I just said. I did not do it Nathan Fillion justice, but again, it's just that, what am I looking at? How am I supposed to react to this? I don't know. And then James Gunn through Nathan Fillion saying, "Don't worry about it. Let me tell you." And it's just that deadpan delivery juxtaposed with that image. So good.
I agree. I love the choice, and that has to be part of why Nathan Fillion is perfect for this movie, because it does rely pretty heavily on, one-liners, couplets, things like that, to be delivered really well, and it succeeds in 90% of its instances. And that's not even the first time that Nathan Fillion basically gives a WTF to the camera,
yeah.
but it is definitely one of my favorites. I think it might be my favorite one. That's a great pick. I believe that brings us to Ricky D from Best Flicks with Ricky D. What was your pick for No Finer one-liner?
Yeah, mine is real early in the movie. They're talking about Elizabeth Banks' character and how she's kind of a gold digger because she's with the older rich guy in town. And Bill Party Bill Party tells the person he's talking to, "Hell, if he had a gina, you'd have married him too." And then the kid that's right there, whose name in the script is Gina Kid, says, "What's a gina?" And the best part is Bill Party going, "It's a country. You know where Chinese people come from."
Oh my.
So, people who have listened or watched To Sudden But Inevitable before know that one of my aliases is Vanilla Husband. And if you are a very dedicated Firefly fan, you may know that that name comes from a credit given in the episode where Inara meets the councilwoman. And there was supposed to be the councilwoman's husband in that episode who was very vanilla, and his scene was cut. But his credit was still in the episode as Vanilla Husband. All of this, of course, to say that Ricky D from this point on may be introduced as Gina Kid. I have not decided that yet, but it is an option.
So,
Josh, my friend,
being one of the three members of this show, I second that. So definitely.
it's all
know.
about the demographics.
I'm not arguing.
I'm gonna do
There it is right there. Look, he's
gonna
already
do
changed it.
a lot of market research, and we'll go from there.
Does that
That
mean I
sounds
get to be
wonderful.
labeled Dr. Zombie?
We can do, like I said, there's a lot of market research that goes into how I name you guys.
That's fair.
So here's a name that I've worked really hard on. Josh from Twist My Arm. What is your selection for No Finer one-liner, my friend?
I had like a couple. I had a few. But I'm gonna tell
actually,
you two.
I'm sorry,
I'm gonna tell you
Ricky,
two.
very well done with the 2 Ds on Kid. That is a
Thank
high-level
you.
joke. Very well done. Sorry,
Thank you
Josh.
very
Go
much.
ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna say two because they're both just really quick. The first one is when his name is Tournier. He's looking at the mutated Grant, and he says, "He looks like something that fell off my dick during the war."
That's a good one.
I laughed out loud, like really, really loud at that.
Well, and I'm sorry, shouldn't something like that not be on you at any time in your life, regardless of whether or not you are in a combat situation? Like,
Yeah, I like that bit of
does being in the war exacerbate the likelihood of that happening?
that detail of the story really just makes my imagination gears start turning.
I think
Yeah.
that's kind of one of those Not so like PC things about the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
I would say it's more of like one of those. It's realistic that people around you would include an unnecessary detail to be
About the
slightly
war.
braggadocious. Like, this is not related, but I'm going to throw it out there too. Like, maybe that's, it could be part of that, considering a lot of the characters in this movie.
Yeah.
Is it okay if I cut you off? Because what if you
You're right.
if you
I'm
give me a
sorry.
line and then
I can't. You
so
do
if
it.
so if this isn't the line, then of course
Then
I
I
will
will say it
immediately
for
go
sure.
right back
Yes.
to you. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So
A little behind the
Um,
scenes on that line, though, is it was actually cut out of the final draft of the script. It was in an older draft, but that actor didn't have any lines, but he was with them for a lot of the shooting. And James Gunn was like, you know what, let's give you a line. You can have this old line that I cut out, and it became
That's
one of the
awesome.
biggest laugh lines of the film.
That's
Aw.
awesome.
that's cool. I'm glad that he got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, this is good trivia. This is why I like having experts in the movie that we're watching with us. Like, it might behoove the show to take more suggestions and then bring the people that suggested those things on. So my first pick ever for No Finer One Liner is, of course, from Nathan Fillion's Bill Party, and he says, "My easygoing nature is getting sorely fucking tested," and it's like possibly the most Malcolm Reynolds line in the movie, except it has an F-bomb in it, which is like, that was, I think, the inception of James Gunn's Firefly to me. Like, I was like, oh, that could happen and it would work. It also is possibly the most Canadian that Nathan sounds in this movie. Like, he puts an O in that word instead of a U, which is fine. But it's also absurd in the way that this movie itself is absurd, which is like, it asks you to just accept a lot. And to that point, I'm willing to do it because it's toned perfectly, much as this line is. And this character has been asked to accept a lot up to this point. And his tone is, okay, look, I have accepted a lot, and I feel like I haven't really even complained that much considering the sci-fi horror happening around me. But this is getting you get just a couple of more of these, and I'm putting a stop to it. Like, he's this close to being fed up, and it's so wonderfully Nathan Fillion, and I think emblematic of James Gunn's mastery of tone. So that's why it's my pick. Josh, was that your second line? Was it a good thing that I jumped in front
It
of
was
that?
not. It was not.
Okay.
My other one was from the mayor when he says, "If I weren't about to shit my pants right now, I'd be fucking fascinated."
Exactly.
Good line, good delivery.
And that's
He
another
just
one that was
it
like,
was so good too.
that was your
Like,
audience stand-in line, right? Like, that's how you would feel in that moment. You'd be like, I would love to know, but it
that's
doesn't matter.
exactly what I thought too, because I was like, that's probably something I would say in that exact moment. I would A, be screaming about Mr. Pibb, and B, not giving a shit about anything because I just want to live.
Makes good sense. Now, gentlemen, come with me, if you will, on a bit of a journey. We have a brand new segment here at Sudden But Inevitable that we are debuting for the first time ever, and this was born of the fact that the movie version of Sudden But Inevitable is just a little bit different than the TV show version of Sudden But Inevitable. And, when somebody makes a movie, there's a lot of hands involved. There's a lot of people that have to work together to make that movie. But much like a podcast or, a Firefly class freighter, it has to have a captain. There has to be a guiding force. There has to be like a main protagonist, a thing that's in charge, a thing that you want, a thing that you root for, somebody that you root for. And what are you shaking your head about, Josh? Josh is shaking his head about. It's okay. I don't know why Josh is shaking his head so much. It's okay. But basically, we have a very cool little segment here that we are just about to debut, and it is called Captain of the Movie. Captain of the movie, as I was saying, it's not necessarily who's the main character or who is, the physical captain. A lot of movies actually have captains, but it's who's the character that you think shone through, who, they just showed up and the movie is just about them for you now, even if, they weren't the main character, that sort of a thing. So to help us bring in this brand new segment, the captain of the movie, I would like to invite our guest, Cameron, to share his pick with us first. Cameron,
Oh,
who's the
shit.
captain of this movie?
Whew, I mean, this movie has a lot of options vying for that captaincy. As we said, it doesn't even have a single protagonist. How am I going to pick one captaincy? I think, I'm just going for the biggest, loudest, brightest, shiny star. I got to go with the mayor, the Thing homage man himself. Greg Henry is the actor's name. Greg Henry as the mayor, Jack McCready. As we've said, he is the stand-in for the audience in such a beautifully vulgar, over-the-top way. And any character that can be that big of an asshole, but that I still just want in every possible scene, is doing something right. I mean, the Mr. Pip thing, as we've said, like, I kind of feel bad for the guy. Like, he's acting like a child, yes, but he's gone through some shit. He just wants his comfort soda. Soda, not Coke. We'll save that for another debate. But yeah, Greg Henry, he's great. I love that he has continued to work with Gunn, even if in smaller roles. I always love to see him.
I love it. I love the answer. And yeah, I agree. The guy was like, I don't know that I've ever felt so bad for such a jerk before. That's an excellent point to make. Gina Kid, do you have a selection for who is the captain of this movie?
Yeah, it's kind of a boring answer, but I'm having a hard time picking anybody but Bill Party.
Yeah.
He's kind of in charge in most of the situations. He's there in most of the scenes that aren't specifically about Rooker's character. It's kind of a cop-out answer, but I'm just going to say Bill Party. He's definitely the captain in my eyes.
Cop out. I see what you did there. Nice.
And we know him as our captain. He's one of the many captains of our hearts. He's one of the first captains in our hearts. So you're right. It's maybe the chalky answer, but it's an answer that needs to be considered, and it's an answer that needs to be given. And you can argue that because he doesn't start the movie as the main character, it's a great pick for captain because, to captain something is really to just swing your leg over that chair backwards, sit down, and start handing out orders. So I it's hard to argue with that pick, but I think we'll do the consensus, or we'll try and reach maybe consensus near the end of this. But to do that, we're going to have to get Josh's input. Josh, who's the captain of this movie?
I would have picked between either one of them, like either the mayor or Bill. I'm probably gonna have to go with Bill because I really liked him. I loved his delivery. And Nathan Fillion, you can't go wrong with that guy. Like I'm pretty sure that, and he lived. You got to pick a character that lives. You know what I'm saying?
He did. Well, it's interesting that you would say that because my pick for captain of this movie is actually Starla because
she lived.
She lived, and she shows agency throughout. She's not an idiot. She's very smart. She's putting all the pieces together. She knows when to act as if, she's good at maintaining when she needs to. She's a personable enough person to have other people like her enough to want to save her. Anybody that can inspire action in other people, that's one of the qualities you want in a captain. She is making her own choices for most of this movie, despite us having been told at the start of it that she didn't, right? That she's like, no, she's just a dumb girl, and she married this guy because he was rich, and he stepped in right at the right moment to save her, and this, that, and the other thing. And then we're just proceeded to be shown that everything else is actually true. The opposite of all that stuff is true. She's smart. She knows what she's doing. She didn't do that for any reason other than she actually does care about Grant. Yes, the other stuff is true, but she cares about him, and you can see that, and you can see it in the performance, and, it was on the page as well. So I would say Starla is definitely one of the captains of this movie, and I'm sorry, I love the name Starla. That is adorable beyond reason. So
especially when you chant it, Starla, Starla.
Well, and I immediately thought of James Gunn's The Suicide Squad that had Starro,
Oh, yes.
which was
Heyo.
kind of a zombie thing going on there. So I don't know, Cameron. What do you think? Do we have to give the consensus to Bill Party because we have two people in it, and it is the chalky answer? What we could do is we could say Bill Party is the answer with dissent.
I just feel bad that Michael Rooker isn't in the running.
He has to be right. Anybody, I guess you could pick a captain and follow them
Josh.
all the way through this movie.
Pick Michael
No.
Rooker, and then we can all tie.
Give us a 4-way tie, Josh.
Nah.
All right. All right.
If I was gonna
All
pick a
right.
different one, I'd probably pick Pam.
So we'll go, so we'll say the consensus pick is Bill Party, captain of Slither. You guys,
It's suitable that Nathan Fillion is your first captain.
I feel like it's kind
My
of
first
poetic.
love.
It rhymes.
Not really.
That was for you, Josh. So, a couple of pieces of business to get to, my friends, before we get out of here for the evening and for the week. This is the second episode of Sudden But Inevitable this week, and I am tired to tell you guys what. First piece of business. The following states consider yourself on notice: Arkansas, Delaware, Idaho, Kansas, Kentucky, Maine, Mississippi, Montana, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Rhode Island, South Dakota, Vermont, Wyoming. If you or someone you love lives in one of those states and likes Firefly or Cowboy Bebop or Highlander or Space Sweepers or Slither, you need to make them watch or listen to Sudden But Inevitable. Those are the only states that we are missing downloads from, ladies and gentlemen.
Are we about to start a hashtag 50 state challenge?
We're working on it. We're in 35
I'll sing the state
states.
song.
We're in 35
Please don't.
states plus DC, so that's basically 36 states, and we're in
Alabama,
17 countries
Alaska,
plus the United
Arizona,
States. So I just
Arkansas, California,
please
Colorado,
mute him
Connecticut.
now. There's just like there's a part of me that needs to see all those 50 states lit up on the map. So if you wouldn't mind, just get after your nerdy friends in those states and tell them what for. I would appreciate it, you guys. It would really mean the world to me. Now, before we get out of here, I gotta ask, Cameron.
That's me.
Where can the good, wonderful folks here get more Cameron in their lives?
Yeah, if you want more script breakdowns mixed with tentacle porn references, you can tune into the good ship GreenShirt. A Newbie's Trek Through the Next Generation is my podcast. I'm the titular GreenShirt who has never watched The Next Generation until now. I have now seen 4 seasons and some change. We're making our way through the glorious 5th season of The Next Generation so far, and it's been good. Find us anywhere you catch your pods. GreenShirt, A Newbie's Trek Through the Next Generation. At GreenShirt87 is where you can find us on Twitter, which is our most active social media network.
Very cool. And
I'm so much better at that than I was the first time I came on your show, guys.
if you'd like, I can cut the audio, go back, put it in the
Oh,
old
yeah.
episode. So,
Oh, yeah, just use the old crappy one from before. Do it. Yeah.
No,
That's more on brand.
No, I was saying
So
the
take this
opposite.
one and put it in the old one.
Yeah.
That makes a little more sense. I like.
But if you
I like
want,
how
we
you
can do it
think.
the other way too. I'm good either way.
But I think by that episode, you hadn't watched all 4 seasons yet, so you'd be
No,
lying.
that's true. That's true.
And there's probably somebody on the screen that would call that edit out anyway. So, speaking of Gina Kid from Best Flicks with Gina Kid, if the good folks at home want more of you in their life, how can they get that?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at BestFlixRickyD. You can find me on the Twist My Arm website, twistmyarmpodcast.com, and also on the Sudden But Inevitable podcast every Friday right here.
Currently, we are every other Friday. Probably in January, we'll go back to every Friday. But yeah, just be here on Fridays.
I
We'll be
hang
here
out
to
in
help you
an empty room every Friday.
Oh, is that what that is? I keep seeing this notification on my phone, and I'm just ignoring it. But thank you for explaining that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm here.
That's all I needed to know. My very good and very long-time friend, Josh, from the Twist My Arm Network. Where can the good folks get more of you?
Honestly, you're not getting a lot of me these days, but you can find me at Twist My Armcast on Twitter. I will be a part of most of other shows going forward, but I am on a bit of a hiatus from podcasting to deal with other things happening around in the life. So just you could probably find me here every other Friday, or Marvel Canon Madness every other Wednesday. I will be on those shows periodically. So that's that's where I'm at.
I appreciate it, gentlemen. And of course, if you, for some reason, feel like you haven't gotten enough of me in your life, which is probably possible but not likely, go ahead and follow me on Twitter at SuddenButt, or follow the show on Instagram at SuddenButtInevitablePodcast, or just go to twistmyarmpodcast.com/SBI to get everything all in one place. You should also go check out my appearance on GreenShirt, a newbie's trek through the next generation. There are 2 episodes that feature me. You should also go check out my appearance on Never Seen Trek, which is a little bit different, and there's another one of those coming right up. You should also check out my upcoming appearance on Nerd Canon, in which I was discussing Cowboy Bebop. Also, check out my upcoming appearance on the Bebop Beat podcast, in which I will also be hanging out with the Bebop board game podcast, Bebop Tabletop, and we're going to be talking about the new live action series, episode 2. Also, go listen to the last episode of Sudden But Inevitable, where we talk about the first 2 episodes of the live action Cowboy Bebop. I think that's everything I've done in the podcasting world over the last week and a half, you guys. It's been busy, but I have loved it, and I have had an absolute blast. I gotta say, with this movie, you guys, Cameron, this was an excellent choice to come in with something I had never seen before that starts with creeping dread, goes through a phase of teenage exposition, and then just ends up with machine gunning insanity. I had an absolute blast. Thank you so much for bringing this movie with us and, putting it in our collection. I gotta say, man, I want to buy this movie. I would like for this movie to be on my shelf because it's really weird. And it's the kind of movie that you could go, oh, you've never seen that? You've got to see that. I think I'm right there with you. Last thing that we have to do before we get out of here, you guys, is to give a rating. I was kind of trying to shy away from it because we've just been very effusive the whole time. But let's go ahead and do it for the sake of tradition. It's something that we normally do. Cameron, as our guest, please, my friend, rating out of 10. What do you
I guess I think I'm going to give this film 8 starlas. Because it's a really good film. I feel like I've said my piece about it. It's a lot of fun. And I'm so glad, Jesse, that I was hoping you guys would be like, oh, it's a funny horror movie, and I was hoping you'd at least catch on to there. But like the fact that you dug down and you found and recognized and appreciated and enjoyed the love triangle and the romantic drama between Grant and Starla. It's all great stuff. Glad it was there. Glad you saw it. That's why I'm giving it an 8 out of 10 Starlas.
I love it. Callie D, our friend in the chat, is 100% correct. She says, Jesse, be like, I'm everywhere. You cannot escape me. That is true. Ricky D from Best Flicks with Ricky D. Rate this movie out of 10, my friend.
I'm going to go 7 out of 10. It was a good watch, a lot of fun. I'm not going to be diving back for it anytime soon, but it's worth 90 minutes, no question.
By a mile. I kind of didn't know it was 90 minutes until I paused toward the end to write down some quotes, and I went, that makes sense. And I kind of appreciate it. The last few movies that we've watched, not that I'm mad at them, but they've been like 2 hours plus, 2.5 hours plus, which isn't bad, but it does take a lot longer to get ready for when you're writing notes, because that movie could take 3 hours to watch. So I really appreciated that. My friend Josh, what do you got out of 10 for this movie, man?
I'm going 8 starlas out of 10. I'm also on the 8 train.
Ride the
no
Ocho
particular
with
reason.
me.
I just enjoyed it. I liked it when I first saw it, back when it first came out, and I liked it, I think, even more now. I guess I would probably say when it first came out, I'd give it a 6 because I was like, oh, cool, that's a fun little horror movie with, some cool references. But now I'm like, all right, there's some good actors that I actually recognize now, that I know that, I'm a little older and I appreciate it a little more. So I'll go 8.
I can dig that. I like that a lot. You guys know me. I generally rate on emotion and did I have fun? Did I smile like an idiot for some portion of this movie? Did I enjoy talking about it with you guys? Yeah, I did. It was really, really fun. And objectively, I have to pull it back from just like a perfect rating, like I do with a lot of stuff that we watch together. And I've been discussing it with listeners and viewers and, with my aforementioned long-suffering wife, I think this movie is an 8. It's the kind of movie where you're like, it's definitely solid. I'd like to own it. I would show it to people. I would love to be there the first time people see it. No, I'm not going to be like, you have to see it because it's the best movie ever or because it will change how you watch movies or anything like that. But you do have to watch it because it's an experience. It's definitely an experience. So that means that Sudden But Inevitable gives James Gunn's Slither a 7.75 out of 10, which is not bad at all. And I think that's actually lower than it is on Rotten Tomatoes. And our friend Ricky D from Best Flicks with Ricky D is a rankings. What's the word for it? Rankings. He's
Whore.
He's beholden to the rankings. You guys, I've got to say thank you one more time to everybody in the live chat. Thank you to Roy. Thank you to Callie. Thank you to Rona. Thank you to our friend Cameron for being here. Thank you, Ricky and Josh, for watching this movie with me and for doing a show with me. I love you guys. Thank you for being here. For the sign-off order tonight, let's go with Cameron, Ricky, Josh, and then myself. So, for the Sudden But Inevitable rewatch, I have been your host, Jesse.
I have been Cameron, and I watched fucking Animal Planet, Harrison.
This is Ricky D from Best Flicks with Ricky D.
And this is Josh claiming that Ricky is a Rotten Tomatoes gina.
And remember, folks, Mr. Pibb is the only kind of Coke I like.
Soda pop.